Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 21st of May.
This is Breakfast with Isabel Webster and Ellie Costello.
What a treat. Buckle up, everybody. Our top story this morning, Britain's day of shame as the infected blood inquiry exposed decades of lies, cover-ups and failures, with the Prime Minister now promising comprehensive compensation.
The people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way.
Yes, Rishi Sunak has now issued a fulsome apology and will be explaining the compensation package today, which will be worth up to £10 billion. Find out more with me very soon.
The US sides with Israel as Benjamin Netanyahu expresses his disgust after the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor calls for him to be arrested.
Grooming gangs crushed as a new dedicated police task force makes hundreds of arrests, protecting thousands of victims.
And the PM is in Vienna today as he promotes his Rwanda scheme, calling for support from European counterparts.
And in the sport today, Gareth Southgate will name his provisional squad for the Euros at 2 o'clock this afternoon. The manager merry-go-round is beginning to start. I think it's beginning to whir with some comings and goings. And Andy Murray's first-round match at the Geneva Opens was stopped due to pollen from the trees falling, which he said was like snow.
There will be heavy thunderstorms for some of us today. Then tomorrow brings the potential for persistent rain. I'll have more details coming up.
So it's being described as the day that shamed the nation after decades of failures, mismanagement and cover-ups. The Prime Minister finally apologised over the infected blood scandal, which since the 1980s has seen 3,000 die and 30,000 infected.
This is a day of shame for the British state. Today's report shows a decades-long moral failure at the heart of our national life. From the National Health Service to the Civil Service, to ministers in successive governments, at every level, the people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way. They failed the victims and their families, and they failed this country.
Well, the infected blood inquiry, announced by Theresa May back in 2017 and beginning in 2018, handed down its final report yesterday, offering a damning indictment of decades of mismanagement.
Well, today, the government is set to outline a compensation package to victims, with reports of £10 billion being earmarked.
Well, joining us now is GB News' political correspondent, Olivia Utley, who is live for us in Westminster. Very good morning to you, Olivia. And for victims of this scandal, they have been waiting years, decades, for this report.
Yes, in some cases, some of these victims have been waiting up to 5 decades for this report, and it is extremely damning on pretty much every government since the 1970s. Brian Longstaff, who was the key author of this report, wasn't afraid to name individual ministers who he felt had particularly let down victims. Among them, Ken Clarke, the former Conservative Health Minister, who held a range of positions in multiple Conservative governments and is now, of course, a peer. There are calls for him to lose his peerage over this. Tony Blair has also singled out for saying in 1999 that although he felt sorry for the victims of the infected blood scandal, he didn't think an inquiry would do any good. Well, the inquiry was done anyway in the end under Theresa May's leadership in 2017, and it has exposed all sorts of failures over a very, very long time period. The Prime Minister, as we heard there, gave a fulsome apology in the House of Commons yesterday, which is something that victims have been asking for specifically for a long time. And also, we are going to hear today the compensation package plan, and we're expecting it to cost about £10 billion. There's a really interesting interview with Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, in the Sunday Times this week, saying that he personally has, put together this package with the Treasury of £10 billion, and he says he's doing it for a constituent who he spoke to years ago who was infected with HIV and hepatitis B and died in 2015. Jeremy Hunt said that he, as Health Secretary, should have acted faster, but there were other decisions, other financial priorities at the time, and he didn't. Now he's hoping to make up for that with this £10 billion package. Should also be said that this £10 billion package probably means that he won't be able to cut taxes again before the next election, something which he did hint at in his last speech. So we are now expecting there to be no budget before the next election. That gives you a scale of just how, an idea of just the scale of this compensation package and the scale of this scandal.
You're Utley there for us live in Westminster. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says has hit back after the International Criminal Court confirmed that it is seeking an arrest warrant against him for war crimes in Gaza.
He called the move a moral outrage. He also rejected the comparison between Israel and Hamas. That's as the court also seeks arrest warrants for top Hamas leaders.
Well, let's get some analysis on all of this from Dr. Krish Kandaya, founder of the Sanctuary Foundation. Good morning. Wonderful to see you. A really, really big day yesterday, and, we don't know quite how this will play out. I think we're being told a couple of months whilst the judges consider whether or not they will issue those arrest warrants. But what's your reading of this? I mean, he seems incredibly confident, this prosecutor, that he has got the threshold of evidence to proceed with these prosecutions.
Well, the chief prosecutor's been incredibly brave, but incredibly thorough. He spent 4 months with a crack team of lawyers, including Amal Clooney, the noted human rights lawyer and wife of George Clooney. She's been part of his team. And I think it's an important day. Martin Luther King said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And this prosecution is an attempt to show that nobody's above the law. Every life matters. And whatever the cause of the war, you can still be capable of a war crime.
We will see these arrest warrants being issued.
Well, that's a big question. I don't think the prosecutor would have put this case forward without thinking he's got the evidence in place. 4 months is a long time with the extent of the conflict. Even the Netanyahu government has admitted there's been 30,000 casualties in this war in the last 7 months. And so you can imagine that the prosecutor wanted to act very quickly. He's a brave man. He's also issued a warrant for Vladimir Putin. So he's willing to go after whoever it takes to keep justice being served.
And what do you make of the reaction from the international community? It's been quite different, I think, the reaction from Downing Street, from Washington, with, excuse me, I've got a terrible cough. It keeps catching me unexpectedly. But yeah, Rishi Sunak had previously expressed deep concern about what had been happening in Rafah, but yesterday said that this ICC action was unhelpful in relation to reaching a pause in fighting. But America has gone full square behind Israel. Quite a different approach between the two.
It is. I mean, America is not a signatory of the ICC, so I guess we shouldn't be surprised at their stance, and they have backed Israel pretty strongly from the beginning. Again, I think it's important that international justice is upheld, that whoever you are, wherever you are, if you break the law, you will be sought after.
What will happen if those arrest warrants are actually issued? What does it mean for those who are charged? We know that Hamas leaders spend a lot of time outside of Gaza, across the UAE, and it does, in theory, mean that Benjamin Netanyahu could be at risk of arrest if he steps into a Western country, doesn't it?
It does. There are 124 signatories of the ICC. So if Benjamin Netanyahu or the leader of Hamas steps into one of these countries, then they are eligible for arrest. And it would be wrong for us not to arrest them if they came here.
I suppose in all of this, the question is also about the legitimacy of the ICC. You know, if you have America undermining this move or potential move from the ICC, you know, is this another international organisation, a bit like the United Nations, where people stop taking any notice if these prosecutions aren't carried out?
I think it works both ways. If the ICC hadn't called both sides, Hamas and Israel, to account, I think people wouldn't have taken them seriously. If they'd remained silent while so many civilians are being killed, they would not have been taken seriously. I am frustrated that America is not a signatory of the ICC. It does undermine its global credibility, but I think this prosecutor has been brave and is doing the right thing. Lady Justice, when she's portrayed in statues, is normally blind, holding the scales of justice. That means we should be not regarding the countries that are involved, but looking at where the crimes have been committed, and that's the most important question.
And just briefly, before we let you go, what do you think the reaction of this will be like inside of Israel? Because this warrant would put Mr. Netanyahu in the company of Vladimir Putin and the late Colonel Gaddafi. I know you alluded to that earlier. But that is not attractive company, is it, for Benjamin Netanyahu? He prides himself as a leader of a state that prides itself on its democracy.
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu was a very unpopular leader before the 7th of October dreadful attack. And we've seen pictures from Tel Aviv with thousands of people on the streets asking for peace, calling for Netanyahu to resign. So I think this would add extra weight to the protest movement against his leadership.
OK, it's always good to talk to you, Dr. Krish Kandiah. Thanks very much for giving us your take on this important story. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, at 10 minutes past 6, let's take a look at some other stories coming to the newsroom this morning.
The Prime Minister's travelling to Vienna today for talks with the Austrian Chancellor about illegal migration. The pair are expected to agree that designating safe third countries like Rwanda is a solution to preventing small boat journeys. It comes as 15 EU countries, including Austria, signed a letter calling on the European Commission to tighten migration policy and to look at third country schemes.
A woman in her 50s has been mauled to death by her own XL bully dogs at her home in Hornchurch, East London, yesterday. She was treated by emergency services but was pronounced dead at the scene. The 2 registered dogs have since been seized. Julian Assange can mount a fresh appeal against his extradition to the United States on charges of leaking military secrets. The WikiLeaks founder will now be able to challenge US assurances on how a trial there would be conducted and over the protection of his right to free speech. And the Princess of Wales is excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause she's closely associated with. The taskforce findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood. The Princess of Wales has been following the work closely while undergoing treatment for cancer. Now, the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings is fast approaching and lots of preparations being done ahead of that important date. Well, if you were out and about on the coast of southern Cornwall last night, you might be forgiven for thinking that we'd actually been invaded ourselves. Well, the Royal Marine staged an amphibious beach landing as part of the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and we sent our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody there to tell us more.
A sunny evening on a Cornish beach, but something's coming. Something the sunbathers aren't expecting.
The safety is the biggest issue here, and this is the most dangerous thing they'll do, because in reality they would be doing this at night on a foreign coast or maybe onto some rocks. So they need to slowly progress, start off in the daylight without any equipment or weapons, and then move up to full tactical serials at night.
Until recently, Major Andrew Atkinson was the officer commanding the landing craft squadron. The squadron's training for its part in the D-Day commemorations in France. In a couple of weeks' time, they'll retrace the steps of 4-7 Commando, sailing via Portsmouth and landing on the 6th of June at Gold Beach in Normandy. The Marines will talk to veterans in Portsmouth and will meet the last surviving D-Day landing craft driver in France.
And while they're on the way to France, their training still continues. There's 3 distinct training courses taking place right now simultaneously. One for sergeants, one for corporals and one for Marines. Some of these men have been in training for 8 years.
Sergeant Fraser is one of the instructors for today. He's proud of the work his Marines have achieved.
It's just a method of inserting troops onto the ground. We've got very different boats. We've got AUX, offshore raiding craft, LCVP, different craft, but this is the base level. Mainly used for wreckies or, sneaky beaky stuff, dropping lads on the ground.
It's a routine training exercise, but one that holds a special significance in this anniversary year.
I don't think the general public understands D-Day fully. I think most people think of D-Day and they just associate it with Saving Private Ryan, and they don't realise how big the UK's part was in D-Day. Of the 4,000 ships, 80% were Royal Navy. 2/3 of the landing craft were driven by Royal Marines. Over half the troops landed were British and her Dominion, Canada. So Britain's the lead for D-Day, and in my humble opinion, it's the greatest military achievement of all time, and it's something the younger generations need to know. And there's only a few veterans left, so it's important for us to remember their deeds before there are no more.
Training continues well into the night, and they'll return in a few days when the surf is higher and the conditions more challenging. Only then will they be ready to make the journey across the Channel to France to take their place in the commemorations. Jeff Moody, GB News.
They had the perfect weather for that as well, didn't they?
Yeah, didn't they, Justin? It's right, but that's remembered and honoured in that way as well.
Speaking of the weather, I think we've got a sort of damp interlude before more sun at the end of the week. Alex Burkill has a much more accurate description. Here's the forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There's a chance of some heavy, persistent rain, particularly across eastern parts tomorrow, but through today, we're talking about showers. We've already seen some showers developing, especially across parts of England, but these are going to become more widespread, more frequent, and pretty heavy as we go through the day. There's also the risk of some thunder, especially across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England. Elsewhere, there will be quite a few showers around, also some bright or sunny spells. And in any sunshine, it should feel relatively warm, with temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens, possibly just about getting into the low 20s Celsius. More showers to come as we head towards this evening, and they are going to be pretty heavy for some of us, even across parts of Scotland, though they won't be especially frequent here. We could see some downpours. A decent amount of bright or sunny spells around, though towards eastern parts, holding on to a bit more cloud here. Plenty of showers, though, across parts of Northern Ireland, likely to see some disruption, especially on the roads. Could be a bit of surface water flooding. Also plenty of showers across many parts of England and Wales, and here they could be heavy, possibly even thundery too, so do take care, especially if you're heading on the roads. As we go through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, we are going to see more showery rain developing, and there's the potential for some more persistent rain to kick in across eastern parts as we go towards dawn on Wednesday as well. Quite a bit of cloud for many of us, so temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, but there could be some murkiness for some of us, some mist, some fog patches, a bit of low cloud in some spots. Tomorrow, the big talking point will be the heavy persistent rain. A bit of uncertainty as to how far west this is going to spread, but it is across eastern areas that it's most likely to be pretty wet here. Some heavy persistent rain. Meanwhile, further west, it's looking slightly drier, but some showery outbreaks, some bright or sunny spells though, and temperatures looking similar to today. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's it's time for the Great British Giveaway, your chance to win £20,000 in cash in time for summer. So have a little think about what you would spend that on. Would it be a dream holiday, get the garden done, maybe some house treats, as you know? That's what
I think
you would
like
do.
a little pizza oven in the garden. That'd be nice,
yes.
yeah. Well, don't forget, you're sort of almost out of time on this one. We keep these coming, lots of different ones all the time, but this one is almost running out, and here's your chance to make it yours.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come. Yeah, good luck. It would be nice. We can't enter, though. Coming up, we have Paul Coit. He's here with all the sports. Stay tuned to breakfast this morning with Ellie and Isabel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
So, a private members club in London, the Garrick Club, has voted to allow women members for the first time in its history.
So it's been around for 193 years. Women were not allowed as members, but they could go in as guests of male members. But there was a vote last night, 60% said time to allow women in on equal terms.
We don't really care about being part of a stuffy boys' club, and to join us to talk about this is Georgia Gilholey. Good morning, Georgia. Do women care about this? Have the Guardian got nothing better to do?
Apparently not, considering we have a huge range of domestic and global crises ongoing at the moment. I think, first and foremost, this was a campaign. It's been successful now by and for elites. I believe the chief reporter at The Guardian who spearheaded this was Amelia Gentleman.
That's right.
And in the initial coverage, she didn't even mention that her father-in-law, I believe, Stanley Johnson, obviously the father of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, a very influential member of the Tory party. She didn't mention that he was a member, which I find bizarre. It's something that should have gone on that list if it was a list of influential members, which it was.
So hang on a minute, who's that?
Amelia Gentleman wrote the story in The Guardian. She's married to Joe Johnson, Boris's brother.
Boris's brother.
And so Stanley is a member of the Garrick, but she omitted that from her piece.
Ah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the majority of British women won't have even heard of the Garrick Club, nor any sort of private members' clubs in London. It's a very kind of elite inside thing.
It's actors, lawyers, writers.
Yeah, and I think they absolutely have their place, especially for networking with people in different careers or the same career as you. I think they have their place, holding charity events, that kind of thing, and conferences.
We already have members' clubs mixed, and that stuff is still not happening. Just putting men and women together in this one space isn't going to help women in terms of cross-gender networking.
Highlight of the show for so many of us is, of course, Paul Coit. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Very good, how are you?
I'm OK, yeah, I'm good. I've got to tell you, it's a little bit quiet because the football's finished.
That's exactly what somebody's just said.
Really? What are they saying?
They said, John says, what's Paul going to do now? There's no football for 5 weeks.
Well, I was going to do some of my favourite show tunes, John. This is what I was going to do. Right, I'll tell you what we'll talk about is managers, because this is the time of the year that the managerial merry-go-round will begin. So
we've been working on that outside.
Some will step on, some will step off. Now, Arne Slot, we've trying to work out whether he's an Arnie or an Arne.
Okay.
A-R-N-E. Arne Slot.
What's his nationality?
He is Dutch.
OK, I reckon
So
Arne.
so he was at Feyenoord. So anyway, he's now come to Liverpool. So there he is. There's Arne. So he said that the opportunity to work at one of the world's biggest clubs was difficult to ignore, which is kind of an interesting thing because It's a bit of an understatement, really, because if you've come from Feyenoord, with all respect to Arne, who's come over from Holland, that he's going to go to Liverpool, then it is the biggest club in the world, it's the biggest job in the world. So, I mean, it's a huge gig for him. So he gets underway and he's confirmed as the new head coach. £9.4 million compensation.
I'm available.
Are you really? What, to Arne or to...
No, I'm just thinking for those sorts of sums of money, it's not a bad... career pursuit.
It's not a bad career pursuit, but the thing is, when it comes to compensation, it's not really a huge amount of money. Because if you think how much money clubs pay for players, so like 100 million quid, a manager is probably more important than some of the players. So 9.4, it's quite
peanuts.
Exactly. It's a 3-year contract which begins on June the 1st. Now, Roberto De Zerbi is another manager. He was at Brighton, did very well at Brighton. There he is, there's Roberto. Left Brighton by mutual consent, did a very good job. And when you think, I don't know whether I'm just getting suspicious about the whole thing, but I smell a little foul play here.
Really?
With De Zerbi, because why would you go by mutual consent? And I'm thinking there's a job possibly that will be going at Manchester United. There are rumours that are going there. So although Erik ten Hag is still at Manchester United, maybe he's going to get the elbow and Roberto De Zerbi will be moving in. So who knows? I've got another one for you.
Yeah.
How about Vincent Kompany? Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Good, very good. Very well said. Because Vincent Kompany, although he was Manchester City captain, hugely successful as a player, and he went to Burnley. So he was manager at Burnley and did extremely well last year, took them up into the Premier League, over 100 points, everybody thinking he's the new great manager, but then Burnley have gone down this year, only won 5 out of 38 games. So what's going to happen to him? Burnley probably want to keep him, but apparently Bayern Munich are interested in him.
Oh, right.
And when you win like 5 games out of a whole season, it's a bit of a bizarre choice for Bayern Munich.
That is bizarre.
So there we are. So there's that one, and one more manager.
OK, could that be Gareth Southgate?
How did you know?
I don't know, I've heard.
Was that Gareth Southgate look I had in my eye?
The back pages,
It is Gareth Southgate. Well, Gareth Southgate, the Euros, obviously round the corner. It's coming up next month. And today he names his provisional squad at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Oh.
Now, they say around 30 players. So it doesn't really mean nothing, this provisional squad. The main thing is the 26 that will be announced on June the 8th after they have one of their friendlies before the Euros, and that's the one that counts. So
4 will get cut off between now and then.
It's a bit bad,
That's a bit mean, isn't it?
Can you imagine? Why would you have the 30 and then, especially if you're one of the 4 that actually get to let go,
Well,
that's going to be
elite
pretty bad.
sport. It's, it's competitive. Yeah.
It is, but, the extra 4.
Yeah.
So 26 now. I've often asked how they find out, because obviously it's a huge thing to find out whether you're an England player. Back in the day, they used to let the clubs know. They'd tell the club, and then they would announce it to. But these days, they just get it by text. So the players would just get a text. And one of the players showed me once this text, and it says, "Can you please report to St George's Park? Bring your shin pads and your boots."
Oh, come on.
Well, seriously, bring your shin pads and your boots. Multi-million pounds. Don't forget to bring them. Oh, yeah, I've arrived for training. Is there anything you've forgotten? Oh, I forgot my boots. I forgot my boots. But anyway, so that's going to be announced today, the first 30, and it will give us a clue of what the 26 is going to be, but that's on June the 8th.
Well, I think whilst there's this sort of little football hiatus, we should really just talk a bit more about tennis.
Yes.
Got some tennis news for me?
Well, yeah, I've got a little bit.
OK.
Andy Murray is playing in the Geneva Open yesterday. He looks like, because the thing is, we're talking about whether we're going to be able to get to see Andy Murray at his first game. You're going on, the Wednesday?
First Wednesday.
First Wednesday. I'm on the first Tuesday.
Oh, well, we'll definitely see him then. You will. I might not.
Well, but this is it. This is, no offence to Andy, but we don't expect Andy's going to go too far, and this could be the big, the final hurrah. So anyway, he's at the Geneva Open. He's playing Yannick Hanfmann, who I know is your particular favourite player, isn't he? But, it was called off halfway through because...
Leaves on the line?
No, it's similar. It was pollen from the trees.
Ridiculous.
So the pollen from the trees is flying around all over the place. I don't know whether it was because he was sneezing or anything, but it was like it was snow. So Andy's saying, look, it's just like it's snowing out here. So 7-6, 4-1 down at the moment. It will continue today, and whoever wins will then go forward to play Novak Djokovic. So maybe it'd be a good idea if he doesn't.
And you've promised me dogs.
I did promise you dogs.
Yes.
This is, you know what, sometimes when there's a lot of sport going on, you get fantastic things like
Well,
this.
the dogs are sporty, aren't they?
They're very sporty dogs.
Oh,
Have a look at this. Off we go. Look at that. Dog surfing, European Dog Surfing Championship. That's Kai, the Schnauzer. Look at Kai on there.
Kai.
Now, I've got a problem. I don't know. Do you think the dogs like this?
Yes. Look at him wagging his
Look
tail.
at this. The German Shepherd there. Look, he looks very happy. He looks very happy. I mean, what a great championship to be at. Look at him. He's loving that. So it's in
They're almost
the
built
north of
for
Spain.
it because they've got 4 legs.
Look at them going past.
They can ground themselves
They've
better.
got, great balance.
The thing is, there's a phrase in surfing which is called hang 10, where you hang your toes over the edge of the board. So I don't know how many claws do they have.
enjoying that. Oh, bless him.
That's the chocolate. That's Koa.
If you're listening on the radio,
Koa,
guys,
the chocolate
you
lab.
must check this out a little bit later on.
Yeah, the chocolate lab didn't look too happy to be.
He did win, though, amazingly. I don't know what he
the
actually
chocolate lab did.
Yeah, I don't know whether he actually did hang 10 and catch a 10. Now, that's a Weimaraner there. That's Baloo and Ghost, the Weimaraners. And there's another one there. Look, he's happy to go on because he's jumping on the board.
Oh, they're having a great
We could just
time.
watch surfing dogs all day. But
Would your dogs like to surf?
I don't know whether Dudley would go for it. He'd probably have my hand off if I had near
I reckon my
surf.
cat would. My cat likes the bath.
Oh, really?
He's one of those cats that love water.
Yeah.
And actually, we spend a lot of time watching him trying to
Actually,
catch
that
the
is
fish.
true. I have got a problem with Dudley, who does go for the water, because the thing is, if there's any water, all of a sudden he smells it, runs it, and the more filthy it is. And also, if I have to go in, I've been pulled in before, it's a disaster. So maybe surfing would be...
We need pictures of that in the next sports bulletin, something to look forward to.
Thank you, Paul Coit.
There's not a lot going on. Did it show?
No, not at all. That's great. No one noticed. We enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Stay with us. Alex Armstrong and Claire Muldoon will be here taking us through the papers.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Ayrshire, the A76 is closed in both directions between Catrin and Mocklin after an accident. On the M6 in Warwickshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound, where a lorry caught fire between junctions 4 and 3 from the M42 to Coventry, causing queues. In London, the A204 is closed each way along Tulse Hill in Brixton, between Brailsford Road and Brixton Water Lane for an investigation. It's been closed since late last night. Brixton Water Lane also closed. On the M4 in Berkshire, the inside lane's closed eastbound, where a lorry caught fire between the Membry services and junction 14 at Hungerford, causing queues. And train services are suspended between Avonmouth and Severn Beach, and that's because of a points failure. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
6:32. Welcome back to Breakfast with Isabel and Ellie today. And time to go through what's making the news. We'll take a look at the front pages first of all, and pretty much uniformity with all of them splashing on the infected blood scandal. The Times is leading with calls for corporate manslaughter charges to be brought against anyone in government who helped cover up the infected blood scandal.
The Guardian also leads with what they call a deadly cover-up of the blood scandal.
Here's the Telegraph. It quotes that the Prime Minister's calling the revelations of the blood inquiry a day of shame for the British state.
Make guilty face justice, demands the Mirror amid the fallout from the infected blood inquiry.
Well, let's talk about that and the rest of the stories making the news this morning in the company of Alex Armstrong and Claire Muldoon. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning.
Morning.
You too.
Morning.
Let's start, shall we, Alex, with this scandal. I mean, horror story after horror story, little children being treated like guinea pigs, lives being ruined, people being shunned from their communities because they were, you know, AIDS victims in all of this, and cover-up after cover-up. And some of the language in the report, truly, I can't think of a better word, shameful.
Absolutely. And you know, the victims here, one of their leading statements was that politicians should hang their heads in shame, and I could not agree more with them. If anything, that's too tame for what I would be saying if I was a victim or a family member of a victim. You know, successive governments have failed, utterly failed, thousands, tens of thousands of people, children, as you said, Isabel. It's never going to be enough, no matter what compensation the government put forward. It's never going to be enough to bring back those people who lost their lives. This is just an abject failure from start to finish. Look, what happens next is that the recommendations of the inquiry put forward have now to the government. They've got 12 months to commit to those recommendations, which I suspect they will do very quickly if they want to. Rishi Sunak is saying he will do whatever it will pay whatever it costs to cover the compensation. But as I said, this is just such a heartbreaking story. It's got similar, I don't want to make a comparison, but it's got similar post office scandal vibes that, there's just cover up after cover up and it goes all the way to the top of government. And you just wonder whether those poor victims will ever feel any sense of closure.
There's so much to it, the issue of the compensation, the issue of justice, but also the issue of trust.
Well, it's not only that, but I'm astounded about the timeline. That, this has actually started from, the 70s we can date this back to, and why we need to look at why this has actually happened. We were importing blood from other countries. Why was there such a dearth of supplies of blood in this country? Why weren't people giving blood? Some people were told they couldn't give blood, and then they were actually given infected blood. It's beyond, and it beggars belief.
Reports of a catalogue of errors, each on its own serious, taken together, they are a calamity. And truly shocking. And actually, individuals being named. Ken Clark has not come out looking... good for all of this.
Not at all. I mean, another statement here from victims. We've been gaslit for generations. When we were told people, they didn't believe us. They said this wouldn't happen in the UK, and today this proves it can happen, and it did happen. And this is just, hopefully a start of what will make a better National Health Service, and hope in the future, and when things like this happen, that the government don't wait decades to do something.
And I think another important point on that, the National Health Service. If this was a privately owned, governed bureaucracy, I don't think we would have any level of redress whatsoever. So I think one thing to take away is thank goodness it was under government control, and therefore at least thank goodness now the light has been shone on it and something can and will be done.
Do you think there can be justice when it's 40 years on, and if you were to have a criminal case, what kind of cross-examination, what kind of memory will people have of all of those details? And many people will have died as well.
That is the problem with looking through the optic of the timeline, and that is the difficulty in that. But I still go back to the fact that it's an absolutely egregiously horrible thing that's happened, but thankfully now the spotlight is on it and something, Godspeed, will be done.
What do you make of corporate manslaughter charges against Whitehall departments, and also, as Izzy just alluded to, Ken Clark losing his peerage?
Well, potentially. I mean, but there's I think everyone has to be held accountable, and everyone has to be made aware of cause and effect. So therefore, if it is a charge of corporate manslaughter, then so be it.
It's a difficult question, isn't it, with blame, because as it went on for so many years, across so many departments, across politics, the civil servants, across the NHS, blame is across so many different departments.
Yeah.
It's difficult to...
It's
easy to hide behind.
Well, that's what they have been doing. They have been hiding.
That's it. And it's, again, going back to the post office, there's just so many people involved in it who you can't probably... Well, you definitely can't one person, you know, you can't say you are responsible. There is just a range of departments and politicians who are absolutely responsible for this, but haven't faced justice yet, and they should face some form of justice.
Of course they should.
I don't know whether corporate manslaughter is the correct one. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but there should be more done to compensate the victims.
And, you know, we'll all agree that the victims in this need compensation, but let's not forget that money does come from the taxpayer, so we're all being penalised in this, which is part of the tragedy as well.
Why are people so frightened of the truth, eh? Why are we?
But there is a question, isn't there, culturally? We've seen this before. So saw it with Bloody Sunday. It took an awful long time to get an apology. They've seen it at the post office scandal. We've seen it with maternity failings now within the NHS. There's this culture in Britain where it takes so long to identify that a problem has happened. And then to get an apology.
Well, this is it. And you know, again, victims saying here, there's just more and more statements coming out from the government's plan to provide a detailed response today suggested it was engineering a political moment which many people will find offensive that will continue to compound suffering. This is silly, isn't it? It's like common sense. The public are saying this is wrong. That we all know that this is wrong. Come out with a robust statement to say we are going to do everything we can to get justice. That's all people expect.
Try and restore some confidence.
Absolutely.
Well, we've got Mel Stride for the government coming on in a few minutes, so we will pick up a lot of those points with him. And in the meantime, we'll try and look at some other stories.
Yes, let's. Claire, let's talk about this arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas leaders from the ICC.
So this is really interesting, actually, because the ICC have come out and they've actually said that Israel are committing genocide on the Palestinians.
Well, just to be 100% not pedantic about it all, but I mean, the ICC haven't, as an organisation, confirmed that yet. This is the chief prosecutor hoping that he can bring a case.
Right, so that's what they've said. But they've also issued a warrant for the arrests of both the Hamas leader and the leader of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. I think the parity here between the two sides is such that I think politically and fiscally here and commercially here, we are divided in a nation in terms of what we think is and who is to blame. Is it Israel? Is it Palestine? And many people now are calling for ceasefire. Look what's happening to the higher echelons of the universities in this country. The Russell Group universities, Uxbridge universities, all these students are being mobilised to the Palestinian cause. There is a lot of support out there for Palestine. So I think the ICC... Actually, this calling, I think, is a very positive thing, and I'll tell you why. I think it is an institution that will actually throw, as I said, parity on this situation and actually say to people, this is what's happening. Let's try and come together, because both sides will be up in arms about this. They'll both be saying, that's not fair. We're not committing Jewish genocide, the Jews will say, I'm sure. And the Palestinians, led by Hamas, which are not a legitimate political party, who are terrorists, will say, well, we're not. And I think hopefully this will bring together, and hopefully, from my own view, I really hope for a ceasefire really soon.
Well, we will also pick that up with the government in just a moment, but just squeezing in another story before we do our morning round, Alex. Let's talk about cancer-detecting AI being offered to all hospitals, which sounds like much-needed progress, particularly in an area where we are lagging behind our European counterparts.
Absolutely. This could be a game changer. And again, I love seeing these positive AI stories, because AI can be used to really save, well, it can save millions of lives, hopefully at some point in time. But essentially what this is doing is saving the radiographer's time. So at the moment, medics are sort of, from what I understand, spending 2 hours sort of contouring bones and organs and trying to get the scans correct. And this is going to free up to 70% of their time in the future, which will be going to be spent with patients. So you can imagine the kind of increase in treatments, in care. You know, the government are putting in 15.5 million into this. So there's pretty big investment, and it will start getting rolled out within weeks. So people should start
seeing...
The
research in this has been absolutely phenomenal, because they've actually... The trial was scans that were scanned by AI and scans that were scanned post by radiologists, and the differences was minuscule. They all came out with the same result. So it has been tested quite robustly, and I think the rollout of this is really positive, and I think it will help patients moreover, because they'll get the result quicker.
Absolutely, and they detect cancer far better than a human does because it notices patterns, even minuscule cancers that haven't developed yet. So this technology will be a game changer.
I never thought I'd say this, but it's actually quite a benefit of AI.
One of the positives of AI, what we're pulling on to it.
It's nice to hear a positive story about
absolutely,
AI,
Ellie.
You know, when we're talking about waiting lists, hopefully this sort of technology will help to, you know, free up doctors' time,
really hope
consultant
so.
time, and ultimately help the waiting.
Let's quickly squeeze this in because we are. This is what Mel Stride, who we're about to talk to, is giving a speech on today, Claire, and he is the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, and he wants to try and fill vacancies that have traditionally been filled by foreigners with British workers. Now, it sounds optimistic and a good idea, but we have historically struggled to do that.
We have.
How does he propose to do that?
So he's not in this Telegraph article, but Alex actually highlighted this. What Mel Stride is hoping to do is actually involve people who are economically inactive, introduce boot camps for them, for those of them that are out of work. But we've got a net migration high at record high of 672,000 last year, with workers from across the globe filling vacancies created by fewer post-Brexit arrivals from the EU.
OK.
But at the same time, there are more than 9 million Britons who are looking for work.
Interesting. Well, look, let's pick that point up straight away, as we have got the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Mel Stride, joining us and probably listening to all of that. We are looking forward to your speech later on to hear exactly what you're planning to do with these job boot camps. Explain to us how you're going to persuade British workers, increasingly economically inactive, to fill these vacancies that we have traditionally used foreign workers for.
So I think the main point here is you've mentioned the migration numbers. We're absolutely determined to see those come down. In fact, all the forecasts are that they will be being reduced very significantly, about 300,000 people fewer coming in through the migration route. We recognise there are hotspots in the labour market around certain sectors, and what I'm going to be setting out today is a very clear plan that will be really utilising the kind of advantages and schemes that we have at job centres to have an enhanced focus on those areas. I've set up a cross-ministerial task force that will be looking at making those kind of changes to the way the labour market works in those sectors to encourage and increase the supply of labour into them. We did that with HGV licences and drivers, if you remember, back in 2021, when we had 33 different changes, which even in the short term really freed up labour supply. So those are the kind of things that I'm going to be talking about today, along with a major campaign to make sure that employers are really fully aware of all the advantages and the schemes and the money and the investment and the training and the apprenticeships and everything else that is vested within our job centres to make sure that that happens.
I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but as Izzy was just saying, historically, we as a country have really struggled with this. How is this plan any different from what we've seen before? Is it just more hot air?
No, not at all. And in fact, we showed in 2021 when, if you recall, we had that shortage of HGV drivers as we came out of the pandemic. And what we did was we sat down and we really analysed that part of the labour market, and we came up with those 33 things which were quick and effective and freed up the supply of labour. And now in that case, one of them was the licensing arrangements around being able to drive a heavy goods vehicle, and we made changes there that speeded up the flow of drivers coming through. I'm going to be meeting with leaders across industry and across these sectors later on today in a round table as part of that ongoing dialogue that we're having now with great intensity as to how we can actually help continue to free up more labour into those areas. This is a great opportunity for our country. This is an opportunity to really address this issue now that migration is coming down and will be coming down quite dramatically, to get the domestic British people into those domestic jobs across the domestic labour market.
But I suppose
I'm really very excited about what we're going to be talking
except
about.
Except it demonstrates, or you could say exposes, the challenge of, you know, trying to fix one problem and creating another one. You're trying to bring down net migration, but you're admitting to us that this is going to create a recruitment challenge, which in turn will not necessarily be great for growth, which is one of the big pledges for Rishi Sunak. Labour saying that you should be putting in place proper plans rather than setting up another talking shop.
Well, it certainly isn't a talking shop. This is a really serious, clear plan, and I've outlined, for example, the approach that we're going to be taking within each one of these sectors. We have proof that this works because we did this in 2021 when it came to HGV drivers. We were able to intervene in that part of the labour market and make a substantial difference really relatively quickly. But this is going to be alongside, of course, all the things that the Chancellor, for example, funded with his £2.5 billion investment in our Back to Work plan, bringing all that together, enhanced focus on those sectors. This is a big opportunity for the domestic workforce.
Look, we want to ask you about our biggest story today, our top story. It's the story that is dominating, and rightly so, the front pages of the newspapers this morning. It is, of course, the findings of the infected blood scandal. That report took 6 years, finally published yesterday, but it found that the blood scandal could largely have been avoided. There was a pervasive cover-up to hide the truth. It's the biggest treatment disaster in the NHS. The papers have called it a day of shame for the British state. What's your response to this report?
Well, I think, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, I think this has shaken the nation to its core. I think to have ended up in a situation where 30,000 people became infected, 3,000, more than 3,000 of those have died, and to be a mother or father watching a child pass away, or indeed a young person losing, for example, your parents, is just something that is beyond description. I think what the Prime Minister set out very clearly yesterday is absolutely right, which is, firstly, we must provide full and comprehensive compensation, and John Glenn, the Cabinet Minister for the Cabinet Office, will be making a statement to Parliament later about that. But we've also got to address the recommendations made within Sir Brian's report, a very extensive and comprehensive report, and we will be doing that also.
Yeah, but why should anybody trust the words that you're speaking, that the Prime Minister was speaking yesterday? I mean, Rishi Sunak was named in that report. His government was found to have been sluggish in the pace of compensation, perpetuating the injustice for victims. And your former colleague, former Health Secretary Sajid Javid, said time and again ministers have stood at the dispatch box under successive governments, including myself, promising that lessons will be learned. So can I ask Mr Sunak, he said yesterday, why will it be any different this time? And plenty of people will be asking that this morning.
Well, I totally understand the frustration that there is around the length of time this has taken. This is something that goes back to the 1970s and governments of all colours. But I do think that we reached a very important point yesterday with the publication of Sir Brian's final report, with the statement made by the Prime Minister, making it very clear that full and comprehensive compensation will now be brought forward. And as I say, there will be a further statement to Parliament today to set out some of the details of that.
Can you this morning, though, give us assurances that that comprehensive package of compensation will all go to the victims specifically, not some of it siphoned off for lawyers in other ways? It will all 100% be going to those who've been absolutely seen their lives ruined by this letdown?
Well, I'm absolutely confident, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, that full and comprehensive compensation will be provided to all those that have been affected in the right way. And I don't want to prejudge, indeed I don't know exactly what John Glenn will be saying to Parliament this afternoon, but I have no doubt that he will be following up to the letter the commitment that the Prime Minister made very clearly yesterday.
Lord Ken Clarke is specifically named in this report. It concluded he'd misled the public in an indefensible way over the risks from blood transfusions. He had said there was no conclusive proof that AIDS could be spread through blood. He's now facing calls to be stripped of his peerage. Do you think he should?
Well, it's not a matter for government, I think, to opine on a forfeiture of honours. There's a process that is there for that is established outside of government.
But what does
I think
justice, I suppose, is the question.
There are going to be many lessons.
It's so easy, isn't it, always to say, well, that's not in our remit.
The report itself is 2,700 pages or thereabouts, I think. I certainly haven't had a chance to read it between yesterday and this morning.
But you can understand, can't you, for victims' families?
Yeah.
You can understand for victims' families who say they were gaslit by Sir Ken Clarke, being told that there was no proof that AIDS could be that could be transmitted through blood, when they knew that was the case with their very loved family members, so many of whom have since died. You can understand why they then want to see him lose his peerage.
Well, I totally understand that there will be absolutely correctly very strong feelings about many aspects of the conclusions and what has been unearthed. I mean, look, Sir Brian has been very clear about the issue of cover-up within the health service and amongst senior officials.
Yes.
And those are things that need to be looked into. And in the course of time, absolutely will be. I've no doubt about that.
But I just want to push you on what I suppose justice looks like for you. I mean, you don't want to comment on whether Ken Clarke should have his peerage stripped, but the Labour Mayor, Andy Burnham, is talking about corporate manslaughter against Whitehall departments. Should we see doctors facing criminal prosecutions? I mean, what's your vision of justice?
Well, justice is following up robustly on the findings of the report. Now, in the case of corporate manslaughter and criminal charges and proceedings, then clearly that is a matter for the police and for the Crown Prosecution Service. But look, these matters will be looked at very carefully. I mean, of that I can absolutely assure you. But I don't think it would be right for me to start opining on various specific elements of that at this stage. They need to be looked into properly. But the matters that you've just raised really are matters for the police and the Crown Prosecution Service.
Just finally, we want to pick up on the ICC Chief Prosecutor's applications yesterday that he's filed for the arrest warrants against Hamas leaders and Israeli leadership as well. Some people are saying that the British government's not without fault, and if these charges are brought by the International Criminal Court, that Britain could be considered for aiding and abetting Israel in all of this. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't accept that. We are here as a key ally of Israel, but that isn't a commitment that isn't without bounds. And we've been very clear to the Israelis, for example, the importance of getting humanitarian aid into Gaza, and that's why we've cooperated with the Americans on the building of that pier to bring aid in. That's why we've pressed the Israelis to make sure that those crossings at Erez and the port at Ashdod, etc., are open for exactly that purpose, and calling for restraint at every turn and the appropriate protection of civilians, so that we can move to that point where we can start seeing hostages released and start to move to that temporary ceasefire, at least, to help further speed up the availability of humanitarian aid. And those are things that we're doing. I think the Foreign Secretary is now out in the Middle East. I think that's his 11th visit to that region for exactly that purpose, and that is how we are positively engaging with this situation.
OK, Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Mel Stride, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A range of questions he answered for us there. Appreciate your time. Just a word to say thank you very much to Alex Armstrong, Claire Muldoon. We'll have more from them in the papers just after 7:30. But for now, let's get a check on your forecast with Alex Burkill.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There's a chance of some heavy, persistent rain, particularly across the eastern parts tomorrow, but through today, we're talking about showers. We've already seen some showers developing, especially across parts of England, but these are going to become more widespread, more frequent, and pretty heavy as we go through the day. There's also the risk of some thunder, especially across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England. Elsewhere, there will be quite a few showers around, also some bright or sunny spells. And in any sunshine, it should feel relatively warm, with temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens, possibly just about getting into the low 20s Celsius. More showers to come as we head towards this evening, and they are going to be pretty heavy for some of us, even across parts of Scotland, though they won't be especially frequent here. We could see some downpours. A decent amount of bright or sunny spells around, though towards eastern parts holding on to a bit more cloud here. Plenty of showers, though, across parts of Northern Ireland, likely to see some disruption, especially on the roads. Could be a bit of surface water flooding. Also plenty of showers across many parts of England England and Wales, and here they could be heavy, possibly even thundery too. So do take care, especially if you're heading on the roads. As we go through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, we are going to see more showery rain developing, and there's the potential for some more persistent rain to kick in across eastern parts as we go towards dawn on Wednesday as well. Quite a bit of cloud for many of us, so temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, but there could be some murkiness for some of us, some mist, some fog patches, a bit of low cloud in some spots. Tomorrow, the big talking point will be the heavy persistent rain. A bit of uncertainty as to how far west this is going to spread, but it is across eastern areas that it's most likely to be pretty wet here. Some heavy persistent rain. Meanwhile, further west, it's looking slightly drier, but some showery outbreaks, some bright or sunny spells though, and temperatures looking similar to today. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning. In East Ayrshire, the A76 is closed in both directions between Auchinleck and Mauchline because of an accident. On the M6 in Warwickshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound, where a lorry caught fire between junctions 4 and 3 from the M42 to Coventry. It's taking around 20 minutes in the queues. Trains have been stopped between Bishop Stortford and both Stansted Airport and Elsenham because of an incident. In London, on the North Circular, there's a lane closed eastbound for emergency repairs at the 4th Street Tunnel at Edmonton, causing delays. On the M4 in Berkshire, there are 2 out of 4 lanes closed eastbound, where a lorry caught fire from the Membry services in junction 14 at Hungerford, causing roughly 3 miles of queues. Back into London, the A204 is closed along Tulse Hill in Brixton for an investigation. And on the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues towards the M25 because of roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a wine, what is it? I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
A very good morning to you. It is fast approaching 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 21st of May.
You are tuned in to Breakfast this morning with Isabel Webster and Ellie Costello. My pleasure to have you with me.
It's great to be here.
And leading for us today, Britain's Day of Shame as the infected blood inquiry exposed decades of lies, cover-ups and failures, with the Prime Minister now promising comprehensive compensation.
The people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way.
The US sides with Israel as Benjamin Netanyahu expresses his disgust after the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor calls for him to be arrested.
Grooming gangs crushed as a new dedicated police task force makes hundreds of arrests, protecting thousands of victims.
And the Prime Minister is in Vienna today as he promotes his Rwanda scheme, calling for support from his European counterparts.
Plus, a new study has revealed harm from alcohol costs £24 billion a year. So we'll be debating whether it's time to put together restrictions on alcohol sales.
I saw Isabel shaking when she said that.
Stop it.
in the sport today, Gareth Southgate names his provisional squad for the Euros at 2 o'clock this afternoon. About 30 to start with, and then that'll be whittled down to 26. Talking to managers, the manager merry-go-round is beginning to start up with some comings and goings. And Andy Murray's first-round match at the Geneva Open was stopped due to pollen from the trees falling all over him.
There will be heavy thunderstorms for some of us today. Then tomorrow brings the potential for persistent rain. I'll have more details coming up.
Now, it's the day that shamed the nation. After decades of failures, mismanagement and cover-ups, the Prime Minister has finally apologised over the infected blood scandal, which, since the 1980s, has seen 3,000 people die and 30,000 people infected.
This is a day of shame for the British state. Today's report shows a decades-long moral failure at the heart of our national life. From the National Health Service to the Civil Service, to ministers in successive governments, at every level, the people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way. They failed the victims and their families, and they failed this country.
Well, the inquiry announced by Theresa May back in 2017 and which began in 2018 handed down its final report yesterday, offering a damning indictment on decades of mismanagement.
And today the government is set to outline a compensation package to victims, with reports of £10 billion being earmarked.
Well, joining us now is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Good morning to you, Olivia. We expect to get more details of exactly how this compensation will be handed down to victims. But there are also questions beginning to be brought now about possibilities of people like Ken Clarke, named in the report, having his peerage removed, or also talk of corporate manslaughter even for Whitehall departments. So things are getting serious now.
Yes, exactly. And what was interesting about the report, Sir Brian Longstaff didn't hesitate to name individual ministers who he felt were particularly to blame. Ken Clarke was among them, and there are now calls for him to lose his peerage. Tony Blair, too, was singled out. Tony Blair said he didn't think there would be any purpose in an inquiry back in 1999. Talks of corporate manslaughter of whole civil service departments. It seems as though ultimately it was probably a group of civil servants, we'll never probably know exactly who they were, who decided to sort of play God with blood which they thought could be infected, but it might be, they thought, worth it if thousands of lives were going to be saved. That is clearly totally unacceptable behaviour, and it looks as though it is quite possible that some sort of corporate manslaughter charge will come to whole civil service departments. In the meantime, we are expected to hear about the compensation package today. It could be worth about £10 billion, we're expecting. Jeremy Hunt has already apologised for his part as Health Secretary when he didn't pay out compensation. People in Ireland, for example, would pay compensation back in 1996, and Jeremy Hunt has said he did have the opportunity as Health Secretary to pay compensation, but there were other pulls on the department's purse strings, and he ended up pushing that can a little bit further down the road. Now, as Chancellor, he's trying to sort of right those wrongs with this pretty large compensation package. And of course, that compensation package will have knock-on effects on the rest of the Treasury. Jeremy Hunt was hoping to lower taxes again before the next election, but with a £10 billion package, it doesn't look like he'll have any fiscal headroom to do that. It'll be really interesting later today when we hear the details of exactly how that money is going to be handed to the victims and the families of the victims of this scandal. And it'll be fascinating to see, too, the reaction from these victims. Some of them have been waiting 45 years for some form of compensation, for some sort of redress for what they went through. Will this package today be enough for them?
Olivia, thanks very much indeed. We should point out we will be speaking to a victim just after 8 o'clock this morning, here to tell us exactly what she made of the report yesterday and what she would like to see in terms not just of compensation but justice going forward. So that's in around an hour's time.
Now, a dedicated police task force set up to bring down grooming gangs has supported police forces in England and Wales to make hundreds of arrests in its first year.
In the last 12 months, the crack team of expert investigators and analysts have helped police forces arrest over 550 suspects, identify and protect over 4,000 victims, and build up robust cases to get justice for these appalling crimes.
Joining us now in the studio is GB News reporter Charlie Peters. Good to see you this morning, Charlie. And the work of this task force, well, it has to be applauded, really, doesn't it? Because they've protected thousands of victims, surely.
Yeah, that's right. And a core part of the success that they've had, all these arrests, the suspects that they've brought in and those investigations they've launched, they're saying that's on the back of training over 400 specialist officers. Now, a major issue, if you speak to police officers who work in this field of complex child abuse, they do say that there is a major issue in the police of skill fade. Many of the long-term investigators in the police, leaving the force and leaving behind the skills and drills required to capture so many of these gangs, both online and in person. On-street grooming is a serious issue, but of course so much of the problem now is that it's happening online. So a core part of that training that this task force is doing, supported by the National Crime Agency, is about data officers, data analysts, to gather that information. So they have a complex and organised child abuse database as a part of this NCA-supported task force. And it's been a campaigning victory for GB News as well, because we called for a specialist task force of this nature last year after a documentary we broadcast in February on the grooming gang scandal, because it had been so clear across the country and across all 42 police forces in England and Wales, actually, that when the NCA stepped in, kind of Britain's FBI, there was a more robust approach to justice and achieving some of the outcomes that victims and campaigners required. And all too often, as this country knows, for several of the localised on-street grooming issues that Britain faced, particularly in Rochdale, in Rotherham and in Telford, several other towns and cities across Britain, when local forces were left to their devices, they ignored the issue, in part due to racial nervousness and political correctness, but also just due to a lack of capability, poor skills and technique in dealing with on-street grooming. So 1 year in to this task force, I have to say it's very reassuring news.
Do you think lessons have been learnt from the likes of Rotherham and Rochdale, or is it too soon to suggest that we are making progress?
Well, it's almost a decade since the Rotherham crisis sort of hit the national consciousness. From 1997 to 2013, over 1,400 children in the town were abused by those gangs. And it was only revealed after a series of reports by the Times newspaper in 2012, which then led to several national public inquiries. And the NCA, when they did their own review in 2015, they actually increased the number of victims. So when they stood in, that happened. Lessons have been learnt in some cases, but not all. And in December, His Majesty's Inspectorate of the Constabulary and Fire Rescue Services, is a huge name for a big watchdog that keeps an eye on all the police forces. It looked at 27 forces across the country, and it found that 4 of them were totally inadequate when it came to dealing with child abuse, and 14 required serious improvement. So even among that reporting at the time, when that came out in December, when that watchdog released that report, one of the core, kind of the shining lights from that report, the positive steps, was that the National Police Chiefs Council could say this task force, this specialist unit, had accelerated police work, had made a significant difference, and we're seeing some of that in the data they've released today with those arrests, those suspects, and so many of those new officers trained.
OK. Charlie Peters, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's 7:09. Let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hit back after the International Criminal Court confirmed it was seeking an arrest warrant against him for war crimes in Gaza. Calling the move a moral outrage, Netanyahu rejected the comparison between Israel and Hamas. That's as the court also seeks arrest warrants for top Hamas leaders. Earlier, we spoke to founder of the Sanctuary Foundation, Dr. Krish Kandiah.
I think this prosecutor's been brave and is doing the right thing. Lady Justice, when she's portrayed in statues, is normally blind, holding the scales of justice. That means we should be not regarding the countries that are involved, but looking at where the crimes have been committed, and that's the most important question.
Some pictures from Vienna now as the Prime Minister meets for talks with the Austrian Chancellor about illegal migration. These pictures coming in just a moment ago. The pair are expected to agree that designating safe third countries like Rwanda is a solution to preventing small boat crossings. It comes as 15 EU countries, including Austria, signed a letter calling on the European Commission to tighten migration policy and to look at third country schemes.
A woman in her 50s has been mauled to death by her own XL bully dogs at a home in Hornchurch, East London. She was treated by emergency services on Monday afternoon but was pronounced dead at the scene. The 2 XL bullies were both registered following the crackdown on the breed back in February and have now been seized by police.
And the Princess of Wales is said to be excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause that she's closely associated with. The task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood. The Princess of Wales has been following the work closely while undergoing treatment for cancer.
should point out we've got Cameron Walker a little bit later on in the programme and Angela Levin to talk all things royal, talking about that early years report that Catherine has expressed an interest in from behind closed doors where she's still recuperating. But also we're going to be looking a little bit about all the pictures on the front page from Chelsea because, of course, the King was there and he got a new nickname, the King of Compost, which he really saw as a compliment, which sums him up, really. And the Queen was called the Queen of the Bees because she's a big campaigner for that. Yeah, so I think that's fantastic. So we're talking about all things royal a little bit later on.
And so lovely to see them laughing and smiling as well, because they have been through so much, haven't they, in recent months. So, and we know how much they love nature and the outdoors and all things beautiful.
Yes.
So beautiful pictures coming from Chelsea. Talking of beautiful things, it's been gorgeous weather.
It has
the
been.
past few
Will it
days.
last, though?
Well, will it? That's a question for Alex Burkle.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There's a chance of some heavy, persistent rain, particularly across eastern parts tomorrow, but through today, we're talking about showers. We've already seen some showers developing, especially across parts of England, but these are going to become more widespread, more frequent, and pretty heavy as we go through the day. There's also the risk of some thunder, especially across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England. Elsewhere, there will be quite a few showers around, also some bright or sunny spells. And in any sunshine, it should feel relatively warm, with temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens, possibly just about getting into the low 20s Celsius. More showers to come as we head towards this evening, and they are going to be pretty heavy for some of us, even across parts of Scotland, though they won't be especially frequent here. We could see some downpours. A decent amount of bright or sunny spells around, though towards eastern parts holding on to a bit more cloud here. Plenty of showers, though, across parts of Northern Ireland, likely to see some disruption, especially on the roads. Could be a bit of surface water flooding. Also plenty of showers across many parts of England and Wales, and here they could be heavy, possibly even thundery too, so do take care, especially if you're heading on the roads. As we go through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, we are going to see more showery rain developing, and there's the potential for some more persistent rain to kick in across eastern parts as we go towards dawn on Wednesday as well. Quite a bit of cloud for many of us, so temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, but there could be some murkiness for some of us, some mist, some fog patches, a bit of low cloud in some spots. Tomorrow, the big talking point will be the heavy persistent rain. A bit of uncertainty as to how far west this is going to spread, but it is across eastern areas that it's most likely to be pretty wet here. Some heavy persistent rain. Meanwhile, further west, it's looking slightly drier, but some showery outbreaks, some bright or sunny spells though, and temperatures looking similar to today. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time now for our giveaway, the biggest cash prize we've ever offered you, £20,000 of tax-free cash that you can spend however you like.
Yes, have a little think about what you'd like to spend it on, because it is totally tax-free, so you will see every single penny of it. But you will have to hurry and get your entry in as time is ticking on for your chance to win. Here's how.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, should we put together tougher restrictions on alcohol? Big debate this morning. It's costing more to the taxpayer than it's bringing in revenue. Our debate this morning in just a moment.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's Tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast with Isabel Webster and Ellie Costello. Now, shocking new figures from the Institute of Alcohol Studies has revealed that the cost of alcohol costs the economy more than £24 billion a year.
It found that there'd been a steady increase in alcohol consumption and alcohol-related deaths. So we're asking this morning, is it time to get tougher on alcohol?
Well, joining us now is the Chief Executive of ROC Angels, Paul Blakey, who says alcohol is vital to our economy, and co-founder of the social chain, Dom McGregor, who has said, why not ban it? OK, very good morning to both of you. Good to see you both. Dom, let's start with you. Is it time that we put restrictions on alcohol?
I think I've been sober for 8 years now, and my entire kind of debate back to me is that the alcohol's been good for the economy because the tax that's raised from it. This is the first time I've ever seen a statistic which says that actually alcohol costs the economy more than it does raising tax. And I think my view is that we need to have a serious conversation around it because it's actually now impacting people's lives more than we ever imagined, from financial and from health. And I think what we're kind of talking about here is we're not talking about someone who has one glass of wine at home with a meal. We're actually talking very much about binging, talking about drinking to excess. You look at the figures, it's crime, which is the largest amount of cost to us. So, yeah, I think we need to look at how we regulate alcohol and how we can help educate people on the damages and dangers they can have from drinking so much.
Do you think, Paul, that there is a kind of double standards when it comes to alcohol? I mean, it is a drug. It does cause people to do things that they lose inhibitions and unsafe behaviour. And yet, drug taking completely illegal, but we're very relaxed about alcohol. Why do you think there is that kind of different approach?
I think historically England's been, the world is kind of very relaxed about alcohol, and obviously alcohol is probably more pleasurable, more fun. And certainly through the work that I do with Street Angels, working on the streets and at festivals, we see people drinking lots and lots of alcohol. But interestingly, it's the binge drinking that's actually reduced over the years. So we've very much gone from this binge culture to a much less, more balanced use of alcohol. And certainly young people today are not drinking as much as they did 19 years ago when we started doing Street Angels.
Dom, I just wanted to pick you up on a word that you said. I know Paul's just mentioned it as well. It's the word education, because instead of restrictions and putting bans on people, people just come straight back and say, we're not a nanny state. We shouldn't be a nanny state, at least. We shouldn't be putting restrictions on something that people enjoy. Isn't education the answer? And educating people about the dangers of binge drinking and drinking to excess?
Yeah, look, I'm sober because I drank a lot of alcohol. That's the reason I'm here. I'm probably more qualified to talk about the damages than anyone because I've actually seen them, how they impact my life firsthand. I was completely unaware at the ages of 21, 22, the damage that it could do to you. I remember being 18 and thinking, oh my God, the first thing I'm going to do when I'm 18 is buy a drink. And that is so ingrained in our culture. So I do think there's a real piece to do around educating people around the damages it will do. And short term and long term, we have it with drugs, as you said. We're told that we have a drug will kill ourselves. That's kind of what we learn from a young age and how bad they are. But actually, we actually have this acceptance that alcohol is something to celebrate life with, to enjoy, to have constantly, and to be this thing that as soon as you turn 18, you can suddenly do and you should do because it's normal.
Yeah, and I suppose, Paul, the argument as well against a ban would be, well, where do you draw the line? What about those people that overeat, that are obese, that are costing the taxpayer a fortune in terms of NHS treatment and all their related illnesses, etc.? If you start with alcohol, slippery slope, isn't it, to pretty much banning everything?
It could be, yeah, and the last thing that you want to do really is push something underground, something that's been so well accepted in society underground. And certainly education. I often go into schools to talk about alcohol and safety, and lots of our Street Angel teams across the country will do that. And we are finding that young people certainly are more aware now of the need to be safe around alcohol consumption, and actually alcohol consumption amongst young people is decreasing. We're finding now that young people want those kind of Instagrammable moments where they'll, go on holiday, go to a festival, go to an event, and they want to kind of celebrate in that way rather than going to the local nightclub week in, week out. But certainly if you look at our culture, every TV soap opera is based around a pub, and actually pubs can be that real heart of the community. And I think that's something to be celebrated. Where else can you go that's not alcohol related, where people can come and just have time together with other people?
It's hard to argue with that, isn't it, Dom? It is part of the great British culture, the pub culture.
It's really easy to argue with that. We mentioned a word earlier about fun. And alcohol is fun. Alcohol's not fun. Come on. There's so many other ways to have fun. I've done festivals about drinking. I go on nights out about drinking. Everything that we do, and every time we have fun, we don't have to have alcohol around it. That's one of the cultural lies we're telling everyone. So, I've done Coachella, I've done Glastonbury, I've done all these festivals, and I've never had a drink, and I've had a better time than seeing people who are lying on the floor of mud drunk. So, I don't think these two things have to be completely associated. I don't think you have to go to the pub to drink. I don't think you have to connect with people to drink. There's so many other healthy ways to spend time with people. OK,
just a really quick one, Dom. If you'd have had a sticker on your bottle of beer that showed cirrhosis of the liver or the sort of alcohol-related complications that people can develop, would that have made you think twice? And I'm thinking, in comparison with the cigarette packets that people are used to seeing now.
Yeah, obviously the data says that it works. Smoking is declining, so the kind of risk is there. But I think the bigger area is marketing. We kind of have this emotional connection driven into us through areas like Guinness and the Six Nations, and the belief that we have to have alcohol at festivals. So I think we should look at the marketing of alcohol and where it reaches and how people perceive it, then direct kind of images on bottles.
Really good conversation, both of you. Thank you very much indeed. Paul Blakey and Dom McGregor. Good to see you both this morning.
Yeah, do get in touch at home as well. What do you think about this? gbnews.com/your say, and we'll read out some of those just a little bit later on.
Now, do stay with us. Coming up, Paul Coit will be here with all your sport. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel Webster and Ellie Costello.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Ayrshire, the A76 is closed each way between Auchinleck and Mocklin after an accident. In Lincolnshire, the A153 is closed each way between North Kyme and Alnwick after an accident. On the M6 in Warwickshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound, where a lorry caught fire between junctions 4 and 3 from the M42 to Coventry. It's taking around half an hour in the queues. Trains have been stopped between Stansted Airport and Audley End, also between Stansted Airport and Bishop Stortford, and between Bishop Stortford and Audley End because of an incident. On the M4 in Berkshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed eastbound, where a lorry caught fire between the Membry Services and junction 14 at Hungerford, causing 3 miles of queues. And on the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues towards the M25 because of ongoing roadworks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to breakfast. The time is 7:29 and Paul Coit is here with us to go through all the sport.
Got a very long list, considering it's quiet for sport.
You know what? It's a long list, but it's not high quality. That's all I can say. You know, I'll do what I can. We're all heading towards it. It all depends whether you want to go for the surfing dogs again or not.
We'll end on the high, I reckon.
We want to end on the high because we've got a golf expert as well that makes messes of the shots she's demonstrating as well.
Sounds entertaining.
Well, let's start with managers, shall we?
The merry-go-round of managers.
The merry-go-round, because that's what happened. Who knows where it's going to stop? Some will jump on, some will jump off. We got Arne Slot, who is the new manager of Liverpool. So it's been announced officially that he will start on June the 1st. There's Arnie there, and that's the scarf of Feyenoord. There he is, looking very happy with himself.
Oh, just on the topic of Liverpool, Anne Diamond was saying at the weekend she's got a bit of a soft spot for Jurgen Klopp.
Oh, I do. I saw the way he
could...
behaves in press conferences, but I think he's a handsome manager.
Oh, yeah, well, so does Anne Diamond.
Well,
She's got competition.
Is this
so you need to have
new teeth and eyes lasered?
No,
or
she likes the
post?
teeth.
She likes the teeth.
Oh, Anne.
See, the thing is...
So we need to set that up.
OK, well, can you imagine Anne Diamond
and Jurgen Klopp? I think they'd be lovely together.
It's a match made in heaven.
That's what I said.
Honestly.
And he's retired now, so he's got time to take her out.
Yes, exactly. I don't know how his wife would feel about the whole situation.
Oh, that's a fantastic point. I didn't think about that. Ellie.
Why let the wife get in the way of a lovely relationship?
It's a manager merry-go-round.
Exactly.
Yes. Anyway.
Anne's jumping on, and then Jurgen. I don't really know where to... I'm talking about the merry-go-round, of course. But anyway, Arnie Slot, back to Arnie, who I'm not sure, I believe is also... He's also betrothed, also. Opportunity to work at one of the biggest clubs in the world was difficult to ignore, he said. But you know what? If Liverpool come calling, of course you're going to go there. There are other clubs that were interested in him, but the thing is it going to work at Liverpool, or is it going to be a poison chalice? The fact that maybe Jurgen decided to go at the right time, we'll find out. But he starts on June the 1st,
he's leaving things in
3-year contract.
Good shape, so...
Yeah, it's pretty good shape.
It's a poison chalice in the kind of Man United kind of poison chalice.
Exactly, very good point. But the thing is, it's just that when you get... like most, Salah looks like he's going to go, and then there are certain players that are getting a little older now that they're going to have to start to rebuild. And I wonder whether that was Jurgen Klopp's decision or it was for the love of Van Diamond. That
That's what it was.
Roberto De Zerbi's another name. Roberto De Zerbi, who's left Brighton. By mutual consent, which always makes me raise my eyebrows, because whenever you have mutual consent...
Foul play.
It's...
Potentially.
I sense a little foul play there, Ellie. I'm not sure whether there's something... I've been reading tweets, and the thing is, you can never believe everything you see on Twitter, as you well know. But there was one that was coming out of Italy saying that, oh, well, we've heard that Manchester United have already paid Brighton a fee, undisclosed the amount, and also who it's for but whether it be Roberto De Zerbi, we don't know. Now, these are all just rumours. It's probably completely untrue, but conjecture. You kind of think, why would you leave Brighton at this point? So is there another job to go to? And Erik ten Hag, who's currently the manager, is also on a sticky wicket. We'll see what goes on there.
And the Euro squad is going to be announced this afternoon, right?
Yeah, 30. It's about 30. So the first is about 30, and then it just gets whittled down. So it's going to be 26. So, I mean, if it's 30, there's only 4 that are actually going to lose their place.
That's quite mean to those 4, isn't it? They don't last very long.
And also how you do it as well, because I don't know whether they do it like an I've had long conversations with managers before. Even Glenn Hoddle I spoke to about. There was the famous moment that he actually got rid of Gaza from France '98, and there were stories that he smashed up the room, and he said, well, no, he didn't. He kind of just punched the wall because he was so upset. But do they do the whole X Factor way of going, you've been really good, and you just don't know what it's going to be? Or anyway, that's how they'll do it. They will lose 4. So it'll be 26, and that'll be by June the 8th, just before the Euros begin. So that's when the final 26 will be announced.
Right, we've got a minute, so you take your pick between surfing dogs or golf gaff.
I'm gonna leave the surfing dogs.
Yeah,
we'll do that in an hour. We
comprehensively.
will do the dogs again. This is a guy called Johnson Wagner. Now, Johnson Wagner is a professional golfer, and if we hang on, I'll talk you through it just before we see Johnson. Johnson Wagner is one of these golf experts. So on these golf channels, he'll appear and he'll go, well, this is how Xander Schauffele should have taken the shot. This is the point. So we'll go actually onto the course, which was at Valhalla for the PGA over the weekend, and then he tries to recreate the shot and shows what he should have done. But he's got the golfing yips at the moment, which means his chipping is a little off. So he's a little nervous about making these chips on live television. Have a look at this. Okay. So here we are. Here's Johnson Wagner.
With the
yips. Uphill, landing into an upslope.
Oh dear, that's one of mine. So he's hit that little fat, which is no good. So OK, everybody, I'll go again.
I don't want Kerry Haig to get mad at me.
Come on. Johnson's getting nervous. You can hear it in his voice.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness me. That's absolutely nowhere near either.
Chipping yips. I got a chunk and I got a skull. Maybe I can do this a little better.
He's trying to keep it together, but he's obviously very upset. This is the third one he's going to do now.
One and scolded one. But I'm going to see if Xander hits it in the same spot tomorrow. It's perfect. He's got all this green to work with.
No pressure, buddy.
Not talk there, Johnson.
Cut back there.
Right, just land it near the flag. And here he goes. I've got a good feeling about this one.
Right.
Absolutely nowhere.
Fantastic. Y'all have a great show.
Oh, dear.
So it just shows how it's to the best of them. So when I go out and play golf and have a horrendous, I do every shot is like that.
So well, I'm nothing like that, to be honest.
I can't even hit the ball.
Can you not?
No.
Well, there you go. You could probably do better than that.
Yeah.
Better than Johnson.
Maybe.
Johnson.
Poity, thank you. Appreciate it. Entertaining and amusing us. Next time, maybe we could talk about the combined little duo of Rafa and Federer and Louis Vuitton.
We may squeeze that in.
They've just done a new campaign, and I have to say it's an absolute
We know you love
blinder.
talking about
Ellie and I will love that.
OK.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. See you later.
Thank you. Do stay with us. We're going to be going through the papers with Alex Armstrong and Claire Muldoon. That's next.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
so,
you know,
Gareth,
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh Government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm
you know what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, we're going through the front pages of the newspapers now, leading with The Times. They're calling for corporate manslaughter charges to be brought against anyone in government who helped cover up the infected blood scandal.
The Guardian also leads with what they call a deadly cover-up of the blood scandal.
Here's The Telegraph. It's quoting the Prime Minister calling the revelations of the blood inquiry a day of shame for the British state.
Make guilty face justice, demands the Mirror amid the fallout from the infected blood inquiry.
Well, let's take a look at that story in more depth and the rest of the stories making the papers today in the company of Alex Armstrong and Claire Moulding. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry we didn't have Barry Long last time because we had the government pop up. But Alex, let's start. Actually, we've got a breaking story. Literally as we speak, this funeral of the Iranian president has already begun in Tabriz in Iran. We have pictures coming in of that, but it is also making the front of some of the papers. This is the Guardian front page, and you can see 5 days of mourning have been declared in the country following that helicopter crash on Sunday night, and it took them some time to establish where it was due to terrible weather and lots of questions about whether there were any survivors. But tragically, no. The Foreign Minister and indeed the President on board that helicopter. And as I say, that funeral getting underway, Alex.
Yeah, well, I certainly won't be shedding any tears for this man. He was dubbed the Butcher of Tehran for a reason. He headed up the death committee that executed at least 5,000 political prisoners. And, of course, he oversees one of the worst regimes in the world that executes LGBT people, stones women. I certainly have no sympathy for the man whatsoever and anyone else involved in the unfortunate crash. And I think the world's a better place without him, frankly. But I know that there are many people who will will be mourning him today. Particularly, I saw online quite a few people, sad of his death due to the, being a big supporter of Palestine and Hamas. But as I said, I don't think there'll be many tears shed. That being said, it's a long funeral period. I think you said it's 5 days.
5 days of mourning.
5 days of national mourning, and they'll be installing a temporary president. I think they have elections within 50 days of his death. So we'll see who the new president will be after that. I suspect it will be another hardliner, though.
Well, the smart money is on the Ayatollah's own son.
Yes, interesting that, isn't it?
In this election, so we'll have to see how that all plays out.
Claire, let's take a look at the Telegraph, shall we? Page 2. And the water, this is this ongoing situation in southwest Devon, this water crisis down there. It's put 2 people in hospital.
I know. Where's this going to finish and where's it going to stop? Southwest Water has said it was a damaged valve in their pipes that was probably the cause of the contamination. But I know of reported cases, I know Legionnaires is different, right? But there's something in the water. People just aren't doing due diligence. The water is not being tested, it's not being filtered, it's not being treated the way it should be. And this is the result. This is a result of dirty water. This is a result of cost cutting. This is the result of not taking care of pipes. Victorian pipes are still existent in London.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
I couldn't agree more with you, Claire. And frankly, this is one of the cases. It's one of the cases where I think just renationalise these water companies.
Yes.
There is no competition in this. Capitalism thrives when there's competition, and there is no competition. It's a franchise. And frankly, they have failed consumers time and time and time again. And we're seeing constant outbreaks of things like Legionnaires. And of course, we saw the sewage dumping. And now we've got this parasite that's got people in hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, who's getting value for money? And while that, the bills still rise.
It's a symbol, don't you think, of broken Britain, that now people in Devon can't even drink the water.
Mad.
What is happening to this country?
Mad.
I don't know if I'm correct, and somebody at home will be able to tell me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember that there's some rule with these water companies that they have to give 20 years' notice before they can be renationalised, unless they get declared bankrupt.
Crazy.
I think that might be why Thames Water are going the way that they are, because that has been mooted for a few times now. Bankruptcy and water companies have been merged, shall we say, in some sentences.
What a pressure on the public purse to try and salvage these companies.
But this isn't just a UK
failing.
issue, because the increased cases of Legionnaires is actually over Europe. So anyone that is going away for this bank holiday weekend, regardless of where you're going, please, when you go into the shower, run it for about 5 minutes to make sure everything is fine at a really hot temperature and get that tank flowing.
Used to be a case where you go British water, you could just drink it out of the tap. I mean, I bet you the sales of bottled water going through the roof at the moment, aren't they?
It shouldn't be a big ask, should it, that the water that comes out of your tap is drinkable.
Couldn't agree more, Ellie. Couldn't agree more. It's crazy we have to say that.
We're going
it's crazy.
Yeah.
We used to go to places like Spain and go, well, don't drink the water there. Now I would advise people from Spain come in here, say, buy bottles of water.
Do you know where it's got the best water out the tap?
Scotland.
It has, Ellie.
That's
it really has.
Minerals.
And do you know why that is?
Spring.
Because the SNP have got nothing to do with it. It works and it's gorgeous and it's soft, and you don't need to descale your appliances.
Nice.
Claire, let's talk about self-driving cars on the roads by 2026.
No, thank you.
No, I'm not.
No,
a fan.
thank you.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about women drivers the other week, and I said, women can't drive, remember?
Yes, controversially.
Because I am the exception.
Well, I am also.
Are you a good driver?
Yeah. Are you?
No.
Oh,
Can I actually make the case for self-driving cars? Because I'm actually pro this, and I'll tell you why.
I'll tell you why.
You tell us why, Alex. You tell us.
Because look, at the end of the day, there's actually most of deaths in the world are in this country. A lot of deaths are caused by dangerous driving, but they're also caused by drunk drivers. And some automated vehicles would lead to thousands less deaths a year. But you're also going to get less blockages on the road because they're basically like a computer.
I don't trust computers with my life.
But do you trust human beings more than you trust a computer? Do you really?
Yeah.
Because
Instinct
I think
will kick in, Alex.
Well, instinct kicks in and then you swerve into the road and you accidentally kill someone.
You just belt up.
No,
you just belt up.
I'm going to defend it.
You're such a tech lover, aren't you?
Because I do think this will save lives.
You're the reason we're in this predicament.
Can you drive a car, Alex?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Are you old enough?
Hey, listen, I'm 33. I'm more than capable.
But the way that it works at the moment with these self-driving cars is somebody still has to be sat in the driver's seat, but you just sit like this.
Yeah.
But you can't actually be on your phone or anything.
I'd fall
because you have to
asleep.
stay focused. I actually think that's...
It's hard,
really
I think.
difficult.
Yeah.
You just have to sit still and focus, but you can't actually drive.
Yeah, I
So what's
agree.
the point?
Well, thank you.
Enjoy your trip to London for a change, rather than being beeped at and having to worry about which lane you're merging into.
You can't drive in London. That's why you've got taxis or buses or tubes.
But imagine if they were automated, all those cars, and you'd actually get far less traffic, far less pollution, and quite frankly, far less accidents.
I can't believe you brought the pollution word into this, Alex. Come on.
I'm going to get slammed for this
You
online,
are.
aren't I?
You are. When we're off.
No, because in Claire's world, cars don't emit any pollutants. What a silly thing for you to have said, Alex.
Out there, right.
Right, should we talk about Chelsea Flower Show?
Why not?
Because, you know what, yesterday it was so great to see the King being dubbed the King of Compost, but looking well, Chelsea looking glorious, and all of the celebrities out. I mean, none of them care about gardening, let's be honest, but they're enjoying the sun and the sociable side of it. I mean, are you off to Chelsea? I noticed you've got your floral tie on.
Well, do you know what? It was completely by accident, but, you know, maybe I will take a trip down there. It does look beautiful. I've just moved near Kew Gardens, so I've started to appreciate nature for the first time in my life. And, well, so this story is beautiful. And actually, of all the people that showed up, I think the King and Queen are probably the most, the people who enjoy gardening the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I believe he's a big fan of weeds.
Oh, really?
His Majesty, yeah, because he's into rewilding.
I'm glad you made that the plural.
Yep.
But apparently that's all the rage at Chelsea now as well. And, you know, sort of the Puritans aren't into it because they like, you know, organised and arranged beds. But actually, it's all about...
Puritans.
Bees and wildflowers.
The eco-cultures, you're right. Yeah. And rewilding, it's wonderful, but if you rewild in your garden, right, and I'm saying this to people who might not want to be, you know, the ardent horticulturalists, unlike us four, just watch out. If you are too lazy to mow your lawn and then you get to the stage where your rewilding is overgrown, watch out for the hedgehogs. That's all I'll say.
Oh, yes. Especially when you've got your lawnmower out.
Exactly.
But it's been a children's takeover, hasn't it, of the Chelsea Flower Show?
Yeah.
It's been really lovely, and that's where these nicknames came from.
That's right. So they dubbed the King King of Compost and the Queen Queen of Bees. So the King got this on his name badge, and they had a little chuckle about it, supposedly. And then to go into this children's-only area, they had to pay a forfeit of a posy of flowers that began with the letter of their first name. So quite a sweet little story.
Yeah, it was interesting. I've been watching a bit of the documentaries about how they've been sort of putting it together. The designs that they come up with get more and more ambitious. There's one garden that's not being judged because it's put together by children, but I felt for the designer because he had to get all this inspiration from the kids and then try and make it and manifest it into an actual tangible garden. And then there was one where they actually erected the wall of the church that faces onto Piccadilly, right next to BAFTA, you know, that famous church? And he's built the entire wall, I think it's Sir Christopher Wren, with the glass window.
Wow.
And then all the gardens around it. So
That's
it's,
lovely.
I mean, it is
really nice.
Absolutely world-class.
It is, you're right.
Horticultural design.
We should go.
Yeah, we should go. I'm going on
day
Friday.
trip there. You can report live from your garden. There you go. That's not a bad job.
Izzy's already booked in. She can tell us all about it. OK, Claire, let's have a look at this story in the Express, shall we? This is an employee sues after being told not to breastfeed in the office.
Yeah, well... As ever, look behind the headline, and this was an employee of Royal Ascot Racecourse, and she was doing the management. When some women leave for maternity leave, they do keeping in touch days post-birth, and I don't know of any woman who actually brings their child in that day, but this new mum decided to take her baby in, and she was breastfeeding. Now, she said that the company then said to her, it's inappropriate for you to breastfeed whilst in the office. And to be honest with you, I think it's inappropriate for parents to bring any children into the office or the workspace if they are supposed to be working, because you don't have creches. Now, if you are breastfeeding, there are things that you can do to enable your child to remain at home so the child can still get your feed. It's feed from breast milk, but it's incredibly important for mums to realise that when they are coming back to work, they need to realise that they have to have the infrastructure from the home there in place already to take care of the dynamic of having children and then going back to work, if that is the best thing for the family to do.
It's necessary for them to have told her it was inappropriate. I mean, fair enough, you don't think that babies should be coming in for the keep in touch day. It's the exception rather than the rule. The baby's still being breastfed. Can't we just relax and let the woman do what is completely natural and feed her own child?
It is, and I agree with you, and I'm such a proponent of breastfeeding. I did it for my own 4 for 6 months, and I would urge any woman who has a baby, if they can, to breastfeed, because it's better for mum and baby. But when you're going back to work, if you choose to go back to work...
Keeping in touch day.
I know, Isabel, but still, it's bringing the child into a work environment. You know the way health and safety is now in a workplace. You can't do anything. You can barely walk over a cable unless, oh no, it has to be covered. So it's not necessarily the right thing to do, I would say, in certain jobs.
Well, let us know what you think about that one. gbnews.com/you'll say. Alex, it's a real shame, isn't it? We've been talking about the weather.
Yes.
It was lovely and hot, wasn't it?
Oh, it's been beautiful.
I think we've had summer now. All come to an end. That's probably it. We've had 48 hours. That's
yeah, well, we did a couple of weekends and that's your summer over, guys.
Yeah.
Back to the misery. So, yeah, well, the island is about to get the beautiful weather that we've just had, so they're going to be loving it up over there. But our days are coming to an end, unfortunately.
No, don't listen to the Daily Express, because I was reading yesterday in the Daily Star that we have a heat dome next week.
We love the Star.
We love the Star.
The Star loves the weather, doesn't it? So I'm living for the heat dome next week. It's half term. The kids really deserve a sunny half term. No better time to have a heat dome over the country.
I have a heat dome, a heat wall, whatever they want to call it. I'll have any of it if it's just not this news that supposedly we're going to get the peak of 22 degrees and then we're going to have thundery. Well, I quite like thunder, actually. That's quite fun.
If you're inside.
Yeah. Oh, well, no,
it's lovely.
Right,
you don't want to be outside.
No, you'd be fine. The thundery downpours are on the cards from Tuesday. Which I think, don't know what that means this Tuesday today. I don't know, it says Tuesday.
I hope not. See, I can't dress for this weather, it's too confusing.
Yeah.
I know, you need an umbrella.
I've got in a sleeveless dress today and trainers, because I thought it was going to be 22 degrees. And I actually need a brolly and a parka.
Well, it's probably going to be warm out today, but it's going to be that horrible muggy temperature, you know. If you get fortunate like me, have to get on the tube, you're like sweating in there, even though there's no sun outside.
Well, just spare a thought for those poor gardeners who've had to try and keep all those plants alive through that sweltering heat yesterday, which is no joke in direct sun. Then all the thunder and storms for the next 3 days, and then still keep it looking glorious come Friday, Saturday.
But we've got a bank holiday. Normally we define the bank holiday by the weather, and normally when it is bad weather, we know it is a bank holiday. So it's quite confusing, I think, really, to be fair.
But we have hope for the end of the week.
We do. We always
when
have hope.
Izzy goes to Chelsea, she'll have the sunshine.
I hope so. Yeah, that'll be handy.
Isabel is the sunshine.
Oh, I don't know about that. But thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Alex Armstrong,
thank you.
Pleasure. We'll have more from both of them just after 8:30. But we've been doing our own little take on what's going on with the weather. Let's get the professional from the Met Office involved. Here's Alex Burkill with your weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There's a chance of some heavy, persistent rain, particularly across eastern parts tomorrow, but through today, we're talking about showers. We've already seen some showers developing, especially across parts of England, but these are going to become more widespread, more frequent, and pretty heavy as we go through the day. There's also the risk of some thunder, especially across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England. Elsewhere, there will be quite a few showers around, also some bright or sunny spells. And in any sunshine, it should feel relatively warm, with temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens, possibly just about getting into the low 20s Celsius. More showers to come as we head towards this evening, and they are going to be pretty heavy for some of us, even across parts of Scotland, though they won't be especially frequent here. We could see some downpours. A decent amount of bright or sunny spells around, though towards eastern parts, holding on to a bit more cloud here. Plenty of showers, though, across parts of Northern Ireland. Likely to see some disruption, especially on the roads. Could be a bit of surface water flooding. Also plenty of showers across many parts of England and Wales, and here they could be heavy, possibly even thundery too, so do take care, especially if you're heading on the roads. As we go through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, we are going to see more showery rain developing, and there's the potential for some more persistent rain to kick in across eastern parts as we go towards dawn on Wednesday as well. Quite a bit of cloud for many of us, so temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, but there could be some murkiness for some of us, some mist, some fog patches, a bit of low cloud in some spots. Tomorrow, the big talking point will be the heavy persistent rain. A bit of uncertainty as to how far west this is going to spread, but it is across eastern areas that it's most likely to be pretty wet here. Some heavy persistent rain. Meanwhile, further west, it's looking slightly drier, but some showery outbreaks, some bright or sunny spells though, and temperatures looking similar to today. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Ayrshire, the A76 is closed each way between the Templeton roundabout and the Catrin turnoff after an accident last night. In Lincolnshire, the A153 is closed each way between North Kyme and Alnwick after an accident. On the M6 in Warwickshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound where a lorry caught fire between junctions 4 and 3 from the M42 to Coventry. It's taking around 40 minutes in the queues with delays too on the A45 as you divert. Train services are suspended between Stansted Airport and both Audley End and Bishop Stortford because of an incident. On the M4 in Berkshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed eastbound where a lorry caught fire between the Membry services and junction 14 at Hungerford, causing queues. In London, Tulse Hill in Brixton's closed for an investigation, and on the M25 in Surrey there are 2 out of 4 lanes closed clockwise where someone's broken down at junction 8 at Reigate, causing delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It is fast approaching, in fact, it's 8 o'clock on the dot on Tuesday, the 21st of May. Welcome on board.
Yes, this is Breakfast with Isabel Webster and Ellie Costello.
Our top story this morning, Britain's day of shame as the infected blood inquiry exposed decades of lies, cover-ups and failures, with the Prime Minister now promising comprehensive compensation.
The people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way.
Yes, the Prime Minister has now issued a fulsome apology, and today we expect to hear details of the compensation package to be paid to victims and their families. Find out more with me very soon.
The US sides with Israel as Benjamin Netanyahu expresses his disgust after the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor calls for him to be arrested.
Grooming gangs crushed as a new dedicated police task force makes hundreds of arrests, protecting thousands of victims.
And the Prime Minister is in Vienna today as he promotes his Rwanda scheme, calling for support from his European counterparts.
Plus, it's a royal bloom as King Charles and Queen Camilla visit the Chelsea Flower Show, much to the public's delight. And Cameron Walker will be here with all your royal news in just a moment.
And in the sport this morning, Gareth Southgate will name his provisional squad for the Euros at 2 o'clock this afternoon. A few days ahead of the French Open, Andy Murray's first round match at the Geneva Open was stopped due to pollen from the trees falling like snow. And by the way, I will have Federer and Nadal on a Louis Vuitton trunk in the snow just for you. OK, we'll do that. And also the return of the European Dog Surfing Championships. It's not a slow day.
There will be heavy thunderstorms for some of us today. Then tomorrow brings the potential for persistent rain. I'll have more details coming up.
Good morning to you. It was the day that shamed the nation after decades of failures, mismanagement and cover-ups. Well, the Prime Minister has finally apologised over the infected blood scandal, which, since the 1980s, has seen 3,000 people die and 30,000 people infected.
This is a day of shame for the British state. Today's report shows a decades-long moral failure at the heart of our national life. From the National Health Service to the Civil Service, to ministers in successive governments, at every level, the people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way. They failed the victims and their families, and they failed this country.
Well, the inquiry was announced by Theresa May back in 2017 and begun in 2018. It handed down its final report yesterday, offering a damning indictment on decades of mismanagement.
Well, today the government is set to outline a compensation package to victims, with reports of £10 billion being earmarked.
Well, joining us now is GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley. Good to see you this morning, Olivia. And it's all over the front pages this morning, rightly so. Britain's day of shame.
Well, absolutely. This is an astonishingly bad day for every government back since the 1980s. No government has done enough or anything really until this point to rectify the damage done to those victims of the infected blood scandal. We heard that fulsome apology from Rishi Sunak yesterday. That's something which victims have been calling for a long time now. And today we're going to hear details of the compensation package. Now, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, has said that he will pay whatever it costs to the victims of the scandal, and it's thought to be up to £10 billion. We don't know the details on how that money is going to be paid out, who exactly it's going to be paid out to, because of course there is a huge ripple effect with a scandal like this, with the children and sometimes the children of children being affected by it. We don't know who it's going to be paid to, but we do know it is going to be a lot of money. The problem, though, is after all of this time, after all of this terrible inaction on the part of so many, not only ministers but also government departments, major parts of the NHS, will anything be enough to help those victims who have suffered so much for so long?
I suppose, Olivia, there are also questions about what justice should look like. Some people suggesting that some of the individuals named in the report, like Lord Clark, Ken Clark of the Conservatives, who was Health Secretary and is accused of having repeated a number of lies about contaminated blood. People are talking about whether or not he should have his peerage stripped. And I think it's the mayor, the Labour mayor, Andy Burnham, talking about corporate manslaughter for vast swathes of Whitehall in all of this.
Well, exactly. There is definitely a feeling today that heads must roll, as we felt with the Post Office scandal too. The report singled out various ministers over the course of many governments dating back since the 1980s, who Brian Longstaff identified as having not done enough. Ken Clarke, who was the Health Secretary in one of the Conservative governments, has been singled out, and there are calls for him to lose his peerage over it. Tony Blair too said at one point that he didn't think that a investigation was worthwhile. Well, the investigation has now been done, and it clearly has been worthwhile, because that is what has prompted this apology and this compensation package. Talk about corporate manslaughter as well. Obviously, it's really difficult to identify after all this time exactly who, what group of people was responsible for the initial mistake and cover-up that has led to all of this. But there is a feeling definitely that something needs to be done and that someone needs to be punished.
OK. Olivia Utley there for us in Westminster. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, we're joined in the studio this morning now by one of the victims of the infected blood scandal, Jackie Britton. Thank you very much for coming in and telling us your story. You were giving birth in 1983 when you had to have a blood transfusion, and that's when you were infected. But it took until 2011 before you realised what had happened. Just fill us in on the first indications that something wasn't quite right.
I had the transfusions in 83. I was following and had ill health throughout, but the doctors never ever put two and two together. I had 3 major operations, 1 a year for 3 years, and I always told them I had a transfusion in the at-risk register, and nobody questioned the at-risk time. Nobody questioned anything. And in 2011, I felt so poorly. I went to my GP, and he did blood tests, and he phoned me at home to tell me my liver was in a really bad way, needed more blood tests. Phoned again at home to say, you've got Hep C, can we test your blood now for HIV? I luckily dodged that bullet, but because it had been 30 years untreated, I've got cirrhosis of the liver. So I go every 6 months for cancer scans.
Gosh. Yesterday must have been such an emotional day for you. How do you feel now?
Like we've been through the runner emotionally, physically. We've all had to tell our stories because it was important for our dead that the stories got out there. And it's only by getting the stories out there, I think we've come to this point. Because, as I say, we were classed as liars by politicians for decades. So they wouldn't have come to this conclusion willingly. They were brought kicking and screaming by us.
Yeah, I mean, the words of the report yesterday were really damning, weren't they? Things like reports of a catalogue of errors, each on its own was serious, taken together. They are a calamity. And talking about downright deception by NHS and government, that this was not an accident, that Department of Health workers deliberately destroyed documents. I mean, what's your overriding feeling? Is it anger? Is it sadness? Or is it just exhaustion?
All of those. To read in black and white yesterday when I had the report that in 1965, Germany was the donations, the blood donations, if there were high levels of a liver enzyme, they were taking them out. That was in 1965. I was infected in 83. When I first came into this, naively, I thought there were no tests, nobody knew, so it wasn't anybody's fault. They knew from the 40s when soldiers came back from war that they had transfusions were going yellow and that they should have been monitored. If somebody had monitored me after my transfusion, I wouldn't have cirrhosis. And the point that I started campaigning is I knew that I wouldn't have been the only one that was living a death sentence and not knowing. So I wanted to get it out there to look for the undiagnosed victims. And now they're coming forward asking for tests.
Right. I know this is almost impossible to answer because it is a scandal and it is shameful. But what does justice look like for you now? What would you like to see happen next?
The apology was a good start, and I was there and it felt heartfelt, and it was across the board from all parties, which it needed to be, because they've all had a hand in this over 3 to 4 decades. I really feel that a national memorial and a day of memory for all of our dead, because we all died, were dying at 2 a week, but because it was not a collective 3,000 dead in one go, we've all gone under the radar, and our dead need to be recognised and their names need to be put somewhere so that the families can go and reflect and that the whole nation knows our story and it never gets forgotten.
Jackie, there's going to be talk today about compensation. We're being told £10 billion has been earmarked at this point. How on earth do you ever compensate somebody for what's happened to you through no fault of your own? I don't know. But have you been advised on what a reasonable figure to expect would be? Do you have faith that the compensation that you will get will equate to some of the harm that you have suffered?
Well, obviously, people that have lost the ultimate, they've lost family members, you could never compensate for that. Myself, there's different scandals going on. We were offered, people that were dying, 100,000 interim. Post Office, a different scandal. They were offered a far greater amount interim. So there needs to be parity across the board when these inquiries come out and compensation comes out. Whatever happens, they need to give people that have lost houses and that can't get life insurance, they need to give them enough to try and live the best life they can with what they've got left.
There's talk this morning of Sir Ken Clarke, former Health Secretary, losing his peerage. Victims are saying that he gaslit them, saying that HIV couldn't be transmitted via blood. And Andy Burnham, Labour Mayor, talking about corporate manslaughter charges for some Whitehall departments. Is that something that would bring you any sense of justice, do you think?
After watching him give evidence, he's a vile human being, and absolutely he needs... the disrespect that he showed us on that day of giving evidence, he absolutely needs to have it removed. And he's not the only one either. This scandal is a scandal within a scandal within a scandal. The scandal happened when we were infected, but it's gone on 30 and 40 years because of politicians and civil servants, and that needs to be, they need to be brought to book for that.
Just finally, do you trust the NHS? Presumably you come into contact with them all the time for treatment for cirrhosis, for checks, for cancer. Do you ever have that moment of thinking, I don't know if I want you to put your hands on me?
It's not myself that has a lot of dealing. My daughter, she's a renal patient. I would put her on dialysis 6 days a week, and she's just had a transplant, pancreas and kidney, in October. So it's like every time she had a blood transfusion, we take photos of the blood bag so that if anything happens. And at one time she had a transfusion, and the doctors, when I went in there and said, why? And they told me she hasn't had a transfusion. And I got the picture. I said, she had a transfusion. Don't tell me that she hasn't. Wrong woman, wrong day. Infected blood transfusions is a big deal in our family, so any blood is monitored. Yeah, I mean, there's still lessons to be learned, and that's imperative that comes out of this report as well.
Well, Jackie Britton, it's really good to see you this morning, and I'm glad that the public now know what you have known for many, many years.
Thank you.
Thank you
Let
very
us
much.
know how it all goes with the compensation journey and whether or not you are satisfied with how it all goes as well. Wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story with us.
To royal matters now. The Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the taskforce findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the business task force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, including IKEA, NatWest, Deloitte. There's not many people who can convene the bosses of these big companies, is there? But she did, and they have written this report setting out how businesses, big or small, whether it's a coffee shop in Wolverhampton or IKEA, can make small differences to their employees to help them support young children growing up. And over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. Now, we spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Driving force behind this, says the Princess of Wales, but of course it's a big task, isn't it? That's a lot of change that would need to happen, so it's going to happen over a long period of time. And the Princess cannot lobby government. She can't be political. So it's really, I think she's trying to encourage the private sector to do as much as they can and support and create societal change.
But as you were saying, who else could bring together that many companies, that many conglomerates together under one roof? It is, of course, the Princess of Wales.
Absolutely.
So wonderful news for her. We hear that she's excited by that. Also, so wonderful to see the King and Queen yesterday at Chelsea, and especially with the children and their special nicknames.
Absolutely. And, of course, the King is now the new patron of the Royal Horticultural Society. He sets up the Chelsea Flower Show, taking after his mother, who had the title for 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II. The school children in the No Adults Allowed garden. The King and Queen were both given badges. The King had a King of Compost badge. The Queen had a Queen of Bees badge. Of course, it was all about the environment and the rest of it. Sullivan Primary School is the school children they met. The Queen even revealed she'd watched Bridgerton as well during the visit as well, which obviously the new season is coming out, so she's a fan of that. And I think it's just lovely seeing the King particularly out and about. He is still, of course, battling cancer. He's still having treatment. But he clearly is very determined, I think, to carry out as many public duties as possible. And we have seen in the last couple of weeks him doing more and more, ramping up these engagements as we get towards the summer. So we should treat this perhaps as a bit of a positive sign. And you can just tell, I think, by looking at the pictures here, of how happy he is to be out and about, particularly in the lovely weather.
Yeah, well, he's in his element there. He absolutely loves Chelsea. There have been previous years when we've seen Catherine and the children, haven't we, at Chelsea? And maybe we'll see them back there next year. But lovely to see them, as you say. And I like that they call her Queen of the Bees, not Queen Bee.
Yeah.
Queen Bee is a bit more sort of pointy, isn't it? But that's fabulous. OK, Cameron, thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And you can tell as well, I think, that the King is buoyed by those sorts of visits, isn't he? He loves being with people, and as you say, in his element.
Yeah, he totally shares his mother's views that he needs to be seen to be believed.
Yes.
You know, it's part of the monarchy is that he needs to be out and about, which is why he's been so frustrated by having had this cancer diagnosis so early on in his reign. But anyway, great to see him out and about.
Now, 18 minutes past 8, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Well, pictures coming into GB News this morning from Iran. Thousands are lining the streets of Tabriz as the funeral proceedings for the President Ebrahim Raisi get underway following that fatal helicopter crash on Sunday. The president was among 8 killed when the aircraft got into trouble due to foggy weather conditions. Today marks the first of 5 days of public mourning, with national elections due to be held next month.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hit back after the chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Court called for an arrest warrant to be issued against him for war crimes in Gaza, calling the move a... We spoke to founder of the Sanctuary Foundation, Dr. Chris Kandaya.
I think this prosecutor's been brave and is doing the right thing. Lady Justice, when she's portrayed in statues, is normally blind, holding the scales of justice. That means we should be not regarding the countries that are involved, but looking at where the crimes have been committed, and that's the most important question.
The Prime Minister is in Vienna today for talks with the Austrian Chancellor about illegal migration. The pair are expected to agree that designating safe third countries like Rwanda is a solution to preventing small boat journeys.
A woman in her 50s has been mauled to death by her own XL bully dogs at her home in Hornchurch, East London. She was treated by emergency services on Monday afternoon, but was pronounced dead at the scene. The two XL bullies were both registered following the crackdown on the breed back in February and have now been seized by police.
Just saying, those XL bull stories just continue to shock, and I mean, the fact that the dog was registered just goes to show that they still remain such a risk in this country. Let us know what you think about that. I mean, absolutely horrendous for that to happen in your own home, from your own dog. Awful for the paramedics that had to attend the scene. Awful all round. Just such a dangerous breed. Let us know if you, what you think about XL bullies and whether or not we've got a grip of this crisis in this country. gbnews.com/yoursay.
Well, the deaths that keep happening suggest that perhaps maybe we don't. And my heart sinks every time I see that somebody else has died as a result of an XL bully attack. But yes, do keep your thoughts coming in on that. We've been talking about the weather all morning, haven't we? We've been very British about it.
We've been very British, but I've been told there's a heat dome next week for half-term, which is something to look forward to. But in the meantime, I think there's quite a lot of brolly action going to be taking place. Alex Burkill has a more sort of scientific forecast for you.
Brolly action.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There's a chance of some heavy, persistent rain, particularly across the eastern parts tomorrow, but through today, we're talking about showers. We've already seen some showers developing, especially across parts of England, but these are going to become more widespread, more frequent, and pretty heavy as we go through the day. There's also the risk of some thunder, especially across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England. Elsewhere, there will be quite a few showers around, also some bright or sunny spells. And in any sunshine, it should feel relatively warm, with temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens, possibly just about getting into the low 20s Celsius. More showers to come as we head towards this evening, and they are going to be pretty heavy for some of us, even across parts of Scotland, though they won't be especially frequent here. We could see some downpours. A decent amount of bright or sunny spells around, though towards eastern parts, holding on to a bit more cloud here. Plenty of showers, though, across parts of Northern Ireland, likely to see some disruption, especially on the roads. Could be a bit of surface water flooding. Also plenty of showers across many parts of England and Wales, and here they could be heavy, possibly even thundery too, so do take care, especially if you're heading on the roads. As we go through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, we are going to see more showery rain developing, and there's the potential for some more persistent rain to kick in across eastern parts as we go towards dawn on Wednesday as well. Quite a bit of cloud for many of us, so temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, but there could be some murkiness for some of us, some mist, some fog patches, a bit of low cloud in some spots. Tomorrow, the big talking point will be the heavy persistent rain. A bit of uncertainty as to how far west this is going to spread, but it is across eastern areas that it's most likely to be pretty wet here. Some heavy persistent rain. Meanwhile, further west, it's looking slightly drier, but some showery outbreaks, some bright or sunny spells though, and temperatures looking similar to today. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway, your chance to win £20,000 in cash in time for summer. So have a think about what you'd like to spend it on. Would it be a dream holiday? Get the garden done?
What would you spend it on?
A holiday.
I'd quite like to go on a yacht.
Well, yes, that would be nice, wouldn't
it? Would £20,000 cover it?
Maybe a week?
Yeah, maybe a week.
Maybe
I don't
a
know
week
how much that costs. We can dream, but you can enter. Here's how.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We are going on Hornet watch now. Not just any Hornet, these are ones from Asian, and there is an invasion. All the details on what you should be looking out for after this.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans have got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. It's 8:28. Now, people have been warned to report sightings of Asian hornets this summer, as a record number was seen last year.
Yeah, well, whilst these creatures with yellow leg ends are not too dangerous to humans, they are a significant threat to honeybees and insect pollinators, which we know are worth protecting and ever so important for all of our ecosystems and all of our well-being.
Well, joining us now is the Director of Fundraising and Communications at Bug Life, Paul Hetherington, to tell us a bit more about these Asian hornets. Should we be concerned by this?
Yes, we should be very concerned. This is a non-native species that has almost certainly now got itself established within the UK. A single nest could take out an entire honeybee hive in a day. A single one of these hornets could take out an entire bumblebee nest in a day. So they are very, very worrying for the impact they could have on our pollinators.
They frighten bees so that they don't even come out of their I don't want to call it a nest, but you call it a hive, which is just awful. Just explain why we need to protect our bees and why it would be worse if we had all of them replaced by these Asian hornets.
Bees are important pollinators, and without bees we would lose most of our fruit and vegetables, or we'd have to pay somebody at least the minimum wage to go out and hand pollinate them, and that would be costing over £2 billion extra a year to get English apples and English pears and plums and even things like carrots, which you don't initially think of as needing a pollinator. So that's why pollinators are so important. We can't afford to lose them. We know we've got massive insect declines in this country as it is. The latest Bugs Matter survey, citizen science survey looking at insect numbers, has shown a 78% fall since 2004. So the last thing we want is these Asian hornets coming in here and making bigger indentations into things like our bee population.
Paul, what can we do to protect our bees?
We've got to be vigilant. The problem is these Asian hornets can travel quite a long distance initially to set up a nest. They are established now throughout France, so they can hop the channel, and particularly places like Kent are vulnerable to it. But it's almost certain that they are now breeding over here. So they could be travelling 30-odd miles to set up a nest. Once they set up a nest, they generally don't go more than about 500 metres for their foraging. So particularly people who've got beehives should be on the lookout for them. They are slightly smaller than our European hornet, but the distinctive thing is they've got these yellow feet, if you like. The ends of their legs are bright yellow. If anyone sees them, they must report them, because it's very important that someone gets out there, because what we want to do is to destroy the nests, not just kill the individual hornet. If you kill the individual hornet, they're not going to be able to trace it back to the nest, and they really need to find where the nests are in order to keep them under control. It's going to be a really hard and tough battle to deal with it, because originally they're from China, but they came over, I believe, in a packing case, got themselves established in France, have spread up France, and are now crossing the Channel.
Gosh, awful, awful, awful. I have to say, our audience are absolutely fantastic. They love all matters related to gardening. A lot of them are keen enthusiasts for their veg patches, so people will be watching and listening to this with interest. We've been saying they should screenshot a picture of the Asian hornet on their phone so that they can check it if they're out in the garden having a look. But who should they be reporting it to if they do positively ID one of these little monkeys?
So there is actually an Asian hornet hotline app you can get on your phone to basically report it with. So that is probably the easiest and best way to do it. But you know, if you let us know at Bug Life, we will pass the information on to the right place. If you let the British beekeepers know, they will pass it on to the right place. But it really basically needs to go into the government departments, and they will send out inspectors to try and trace the nests and to destroy them.
Paul Hetherington, Director of Fundraising and Communications at Bug Life. Good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
Let us know if you've seen any Asian hornets in your garden at all. Lots of people saying that they've definitely noticed large-looking hornets, but they weren't sure if they were Asian or not. So I think it's really important the conversation has started. I was at a village fete, quintessential British village fete 2 weekends ago, and they had a stall just describing to everybody what these Asian hornets look like, and lots of people being educated about it and being taught what to do, because it's not enough just to panic and run away. You have to let the authorities know, because otherwise all of our bees are going to be frightened to come out of their hives and decimated. I can't believe the distances that they travel.
30 miles. They can come across the Channel from France. We just heard there from Paul Hetherington. Yeah. But there is the app on your phone, the Asian Hornet app. Who knew? There's an app for everything.
I will be getting that.
So you can track them and log them if you do see them.
So do let us know. Have you seen any? gbnews.com/your say.
Still to come, our reporter Charlie Peters has an update on the grooming gang task force, which was established by the Prime Minister last year. That's next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Ayrshire, the A76 is closed each way between the Templeton roundabout at Auchinleck and the Catrin turnoff after an accident last night. In County Down, the A24 is partly blocked towards Belfast by an accident on Saintfield Road at Newton Breeder, causing delays. In Lincolnshire, the A153 is closed each way between North Kyme and Alnwick after an accident. On the M6 in Warwickshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound where a lorry caught fire between junctions 4 and 3 from the M42 to Coventry. It's taking around 40 minutes in the queues with long delays too on the A45 as you divert. In Monmouthshire, the A4042 is partly blocked by an accident at Llanover, causing queues. And on the M4 in Berkshire, 2 lanes are closed eastbound after a lorry caught fire between the Membry services and junction 14 at Hungerford, causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
It's 8:37. A serious story now. A dedicated police task force has been set up to bring down grooming gangs and has supported police forces in England and Wales, making hundreds of arrests in its first year.
Well, in the last 12 months, the crack team of expert investigators and analysts has helped police forces arrest over 550 suspects and identify and protect over 4,000 victims, and also build up robust cases to get justice for these appalling crimes.
Well, joining us in the studio now is GB News reporter Charlie Peters. You can tell us more then about the last 12 months and what the need was really for sort of a national overview in all of this.
Well, so many police forces have struggled to deal with on-street grooming, localised child sexual exploitation. It's been a scourge throughout the country, and this national task force was launched last April by the Prime Minister, but also then Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who has said today that this is a sign of great progress, but much more needs to be done. She's also thanked GB News for shining a light on this issue, because last February we released an investigative documentary looking into the grooming gangs crisis, and we found that it was ongoing in many parts of the country, getting testimony from survivors and campaigners. And that review was also supported by some analysis we heard in December by the police watchdog, which found that of the 27 forces they assessed in England and Wales, they found that 4 were totally inadequate and 14 had significant improvements to make when it came to dealing with child sexual exploitation. And this national force, supported by the National Police Chiefs Council, but also the National Crime Agency, does appear to be making serious steps forward. We've heard today about 550 arrests in that year of suspects, supporting about 40 investigations. But also, crucially, they're training lots of officers. Over 400 officers have now been trained, as part of this process. And that comes as part of it gathering a complex and organised database. Because in so many of these issues, an independent inquiry into child sexual abuse found in October 2022 that all of the forces were struggling with data collection. And many of the sort of headline scandals with the grooming gangs, Crisis, Telford, Rochdale, Rotherham, the police forces were not recording the ethnicity of the perpetrators for fear of being considered racist, for fear of a political correctness or a racial nervousness. That being prioritised over the protection of women and young girls, that's appalling. And so that had to be stamped out. And that's part of the reason why this data has been prioritised so efficiently.
Have lessons been learnt then from Rotherham and from Telford and from Rochdale, or is it too premature to say that progress has been made?
All the campaigners that we speak to, they pretty much say the same thing every time. Whenever there is a step forward like this, they welcome it, of course, but they say that there are miles and miles still to go. There are many more steps forward that have to be taken. The arrests are welcome, but for many decades, of course, this crisis just went under the carpet and it was subtly and quite chillingly covered up in a rather pervasive manner. It wasn't the sort of deliberate destruction of information and evidence that you might see in some other scandals. It was more of a, if we don't look and don't get involved, it isn't happening. We also saw not just that political correctness and the avoidance of tackling, in many cases, majority Pakistani perpetrators, but also a sexist mentality that the girls were not victims, that many of the people caught up in these appalling gangs of on-street child sexual exploitation were in some way involved in contributing to their own victimhood. That mentality has to be swept away. That's a core part of this campaigning work that they're doing. And the National Crime Agency, Britain's FBI, have been a leading force in achieving that.
OK, Charlie, we say thank you very much for that. And we cross straight to Vienna in Austria, where the Prime Minister is speaking. Let's take a listen.
Something we need to put on the EU's agenda as well. And that's important because only if we manage to do that, we will manage to, first of all, battling organised crime by really destroying their business model, if you will, because asylum proceedings in safe third countries means that the business model of promising people to get them within the borders of the European Union or the UK no longer applies. That promise can no longer be made if we have such proceedings. And on the other hand, we will be able to also save human lives, because having asylum proceedings in safe third countries means that we don't have dangerous smuggling routes. It means putting an end to death in the Mediterranean or across the English Channel. Within the European Union, this is still a stony path ahead of us. We've now got 15 states that are allies to Austria when it comes to this topic and when it comes to pushing this change to the legal procedure in the European Union. Denmark is an important ally here, and with our partnership with the UK, I'm hoping that we will be successful in creating change in this process. And that's why, from the Austrian point of view, we support the British path and the British model. I think it's very important. I think it's essential, in fact. But, of course, we've also discussed many other topics during our meeting because our world is becoming increasingly insecure. We still have the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, and the UK plays an important role when it comes to supporting Ukraine. So we discussed the Austrian position and Austrian solidarity here, but we also discussed the options that we have when it comes to continuously supporting Ukraine during this difficult time. Austria as a neutral country within the European Union and also in partnership with the United Kingdom. Moreover, we also discussed the situation in the West Balkans. The UK is also a strong partner here when it comes to integrating the Western Balkans into the European Union, when it comes to, offering them a perspective. And also, the UK is an important partner in terms of security in this region. And that's why we have a very close cooperation with them, for which I'm very grateful. And, of course, we also discussed the war in the Middle East and the highly difficult situation underway there. And we both agree that the decision of the International Court of Justice hasn't been very helpful in this very challenging time for Israel. we have a lot that we are still planning on doing together. We have developed a very strong friendship, and I'm very happy that this partnership between the UK and Austria has been lifted to this new level, and I will do my best in continuing this partnership and friendship. Rishi, thank you so much for coming to Austria, and welcome once again. Thank you, Chancellor. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Well, Chancellor Nehammer, Karl, it's so wonderful to be here in Austria, especially after our very warm meeting that we had together last year, where, as you said, we built a very strong friendship and a partnership, and it has been good to continue that dialogue with you this morning. And Austria is an important partner and an important friend for the United Kingdom. Last year, we signed new bilateral agreements to build that partnership, to strengthen our security and to tackle illegal migration. We grew our bilateral trade to £10 billion last year, and today we've taken steps to deepen that relationship even further. Now, as Karl mentioned, we see eye to eye on many of the big challenges before us, and we're committed to addressing them together. We're unwavering in our support for Ukraine, and Austria has rightly called out Russia for breaking international law, expelled Russian diplomats, and given vital humanitarian support to the Ukrainian people. And now, we've discussed what more we can do together on the economic front to ensure that Russia's war machine is not supported. Now, we've also discussed, as you heard, the Middle East, where we've been working closely together already to urgently get aid and get the hostages out. We touched on our concerns in Balkans, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the work that both our nations are doing to preserve stability in the region. And again, I very much welcome Austria's leadership in this area, and I'm grateful to all the engagement that Karl has put into that part of our continent. And of course, inclusion, we discussed illegal migration. This has become truly one of the defining issues of our time. We face criminal gangs that are growing in strength across our European continent and beyond, and they're exacting a terrible human toll. People are losing. They are exploited by these criminal gangs, and it is, of course, a threat to our stability, to the rule of law, and rightly, our citizens are demanding that their leaders, their politicians, tackle it. And that's what both Karl and I are doing, and I really do want to congratulate Karl on his leadership here, because he's been right on this issue for a long time in Europe in making sure that this is a topic that gets the attention that it deserves. And in our joint statement today, we've committed to deepening our cooperation to end this vile trade. And what both of us agree is that business as usual won't solve this problem. We have to think creatively. We have deterrence, removals to safe third countries, like the UK's pioneering Rwanda scheme. And as Karl said, it's increasingly clear that many other countries now agree that that is the approach that is required. Bold, novel, looking at safe country partnerships. Karl was right on that a while ago, and I'm delighted that now 15 European countries together have joined in supporting that position. So we will keep increasing our shared ambition and urgency, bringing others along with us on the journey as we have, including when we meet at the European Political Community, which I'm proud to be hosting in Blenheim Palace in July. And that will be a moment where we can take further action on all the issues that we've been discussing today. And I'll close on this last point. As you know, there's an interesting echo of history here, because Blenheim Palace is named after the Battle of Blenheim in 1704, when Britain and Austria came together under the Grand Alliance to protect Vienna. Now, the circumstances are somewhat different today, but it is a reminder that our relationship, our friendship, our partnership has very deep roots, and today's discussions show that it also has a very bright future. Karl, thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your statements. We are listening to a press conference between Prime Minister Sunak and the Chancellor in Vienna, the Austrian Chancellor talking about the defining issue of our time, which was described as migration, and Rishi Sunak pointing to the 15 European nations that have written now to the Commission talking about the innovative and bold plan that the British have put forward with the Rwanda scheme, calling for tighter controls on migration. There'll be plenty more analysis on that meeting between the pair right here on GB News. But in the meantime, we're going to take a look in the last few minutes that remain on this hour at what is making the headlines in the papers with Alex Armstrong and Claire Muldoon.
Alex, should we start with you? And this is a totally different story in the Daily Star this morning. Do we expect anything else? Mars in 2 months is the headline.
Yes. Space boffins. Space boffins.
Space boffins.
Space boffins have said we can get to Mars in 2 months, which is quite a big jump in the time it would take to get to Mars normally. I think it would take at least 18 months, but this is now saying they can, or 8 months, should I say, but it's now with this new nuclear-powered spacecraft that the United States are building, they can get there in just 2 months, which would be a game changer for humans colonising planets.
Would it, though? I mean, I just can't get excited about all of these things. I feel like it is almost immoral with a lot of the challenges that we face as a planet.
Well, OK, I understand what you're saying.
People facing significant hardships.
Facing our own problems down here.
But, you know, if there's a mass extinction event on this planet, humanity's gone forever.
I don't want to be going to Mars, trust me.
No, fair enough.
The red
I do
planet
get that.
is not for me.
No.
Claire, can we talk about Venice, one of my favourite places in the world, but it has just literally turned into a zoo, basically, full of tourists.
This is the problem.
And it's a problem.
This is the problem that they're facing. Venice, if you want to go to Venice this year, you will be charged a surcharge to enter the beautiful city with the gondolas and made famous by the beautiful pictures of Canaletto. But what they found is these tariffs are not making a jot of difference.
Oh dear.
It's still really, really busy. In fact, figures are up over 10% year on year in terms of visiting. So the city have now said we need to put a tariff, a curb, on the number of people that we actually let in.
Are these day trippers coming from cruise ships, from the Adriatic?
Not a lot. They're from all over. And even those that are flying into Venice or perhaps flying to associated or exactly, roundabout. And unless you stay more than one night, you'll be faced with these surcharges. But no one seems to care. They're paying and they're becoming exceptionally overpopulated as a result.
I'd have a visitor's fee for travelling to London. London's busy enough. I'd have a fee for that. Raise some money for the capital. Clean up the streets. That's not a bad idea.
Right, yeah, well, you don't think that
There's enough fees to come into London, Alex.
No,
come on.
True.
Alex, let's take a look at this story. It caught my eye this morning, actually. It's Scarlett Johansson, the actress, talking about ChatGPT.
Yes.
And she couldn't believe the likeness.
Yes, so there's
her own voice.
Well, look, so ChatGPT's voice now, you can speak to it, and it sounds so realistic, like you're talking to a human. I mean, people should just have a look at the videos online. It's incredible. But they basically copied her voice, and she's suing OpenAI, saying you can't use my likeness. They obviously initially claimed it wasn't like her, but obviously people online have gone mad saying Scarlett Johansson's voiced OpenAI, and she said, no, that's not me, and you shouldn't be allowed to use my likeness without my permission.
Yeah, well, actor and actress friends of mine have said that this is, they think, a threat to their entire industry.
It is, and their integrity, because of, you know, the writer's strike, of course, and it was on the back of, as well, the ChatGPT for the script writing, the storylines, etc. But also, as Alex has quite rightly pointed out, your voice, it's your own original voice, and yet it's been uplifted and used, and we don't know where it's going to go. Voiceovers.
And I think it could happen to our industry as well, Ellie.
It could, yeah, it could happen to newsreaders as well. And you do worry in an election year, perhaps not this election, but especially by the next one, you've got to really be awake to this.
Yep.
You don't know what you're saying online is the
Very true.
It is true.
Can I just choose the next story just purely because in a few minutes' time we will be speaking to the opposition. And Claire, you've chosen the story about Labour plans to make it easy to change gender based on self-ID it's being blasted as self-ID by the back door.
Yes, exactly. And I think we really need to be brave on this subject and keep referencing the Cash report. I've picked this editorial op-ed by Julie Bindel in The Sun, and Julie has been formidable in her attempts to, you know, they say she is a gender critical. She is wonderful in my view in the way she writes about this. One thing last month's Cash review, she says, made clear is that there is a case to be made for the diagnosis of gender dysphoria to make it much stricter, more specialised and objective. So why on earth is the Labour Party wanting to bring in self-ID?
Well, we know why they're doing it by the back door, because they're trying to put this big PR campaign on the moment, so we're a different party, we're moving to the centre ground.
Not.
These things, well, that's the reality, isn't it? When you look at things like this, where it seems done very slyly.
By stealth.
Well, it's just
gender ID by stealth
at the moment. That it was a leaked document that the Times got hold of yesterday. But, you suspect that if these ideas are being discussed behind closed doors, who knows what might happen.
I think women are deserting, the support for the Labour Party because of issues like this.
OK. Claire Muldoon, Alex Armstrong, thanks for reviewing the papers for us this morning.
You're very welcome.
Soon, and we say good morning to Alex Burkill.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There's a chance of some heavy, persistent rain, particularly across eastern parts tomorrow, but through today, we're talking about showers. We've already seen some showers developing, especially across parts of England, but these are going to become more widespread, more frequent, and pretty heavy as we go through the day. There's also the risk of some thunder, especially across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England. Elsewhere, there will be quite a few showers around, also some bright or sunny spells. And in any sunshine, it should feel relatively warm, with temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens, possibly just about getting into the low 20s Celsius. More showers to come as we head towards this evening, and they are going to be pretty heavy for some of us, even across parts of Scotland, though they won't be especially frequent here. We could see some downpours. A decent amount of bright or sunny spells around, though towards eastern parts holding on to a bit more cloud here. Plenty of showers, though, across parts of Northern Ireland. Likely to see some disruption, especially on the roads. Could be a bit of surface water flooding. Also plenty of showers across many parts of England and Wales, and here they could be heavy, possibly even thundery too, so do take care, especially if you're heading on the roads. As we go through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, we are going to see more showery rain developing, and there's the potential for some more persistent rain to kick in across eastern parts as we go towards dawn on Wednesday as well. Quite a bit of cloud for many of us, so temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, but there could be some murkiness for some of us, some mist, some fog patches, a bit of low cloud in some spots. Tomorrow, the big talking point will be the heavy persistent rain. A bit of uncertainty as to how far west this is going to spread, but it is across eastern areas that it's most likely to be pretty wet here. Some heavy persistent rain. Meanwhile, further west, it's looking slightly drier, but some showery outbreaks. Some bright or sunny spells, though, and temperatures looking similar to today. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Do stay with us. Still to come, we'll be speaking to Shadow Cabinet Office Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds. That's next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Ayrshire, the A76 is closed between Auchinleck and Catrin after an accident. In Dumfries and Galloway, the A75 is closed at Glenluce after an accident causing queues. County Down, the A24 is partly blocked towards Belfast by an accident on Saintfield Road at Newton Breeder causing queues. On the M61 in Greater Manchester, there's a lane closed southbound. There's an accident between junctions 4 and 3 from Farmouth to Kersley Spur. On the M1 in Nottinghamshire, 2 lanes are closed southbound. Someone's broken down between junctions 26 and 25 near Nottingham. On the M6 in Warwickshire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound, but a lorry caught fire between junctions 4 and 3 from the M42 to Coventry, taking 40 minutes in the queues. In Monmouthshire, the A4042 is closed at Llanover after an accident. In Torvine, the A4043 is closed at Glenarvan after an accident. On the M4 in Berkshire, 2 lanes are closed eastbound where a lorry caught fire between the Membry Services in junction 14 at Hungerford causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a wind up, is it? I've never won a penny in my life. I don't know what to say. Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
A very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 21st of May.
You are tuned into Breakfast this morning with Isabel Webster and Ellie Costello.
Britain's day of shame as the infected blood inquiry exposed decades of lies, cover-ups and failures, with the Prime Minister now promising comprehensive compensation.
The people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way.
Yes, we've had a comprehensive apology now from the Prime Minister, and today we're expecting to hear details of the compensation package which will be awarded to victims and their families. It's thought that it'll be up to £10 billion. Find out more with me very soon.
As Benjamin Netanyahu expresses his disgust after the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor calls for him to be arrested.
Grooming gangs have been crushed as a new dedicated police task force makes hundreds of arrests, protecting thousands of victims.
And the Prime Minister is in Vienna today as he's promoting his Rwanda scheme, calling for support from European counterparts.
And it's a royal bloom as King Charles and Queen Camilla visit the Chelsea Flower Show, much to the public's delight. Angela Levin is here with all the latest royal news in just a bit.
There will be heavy thunderstorms for some of us today, then tomorrow brings the potential for persistent rain. I'll have more details coming up.
Well, it was the day that shamed the nation. After decades of failures, mismanagement and cover-ups, the Prime Minister has finally apologised over the infected blood scandal, which, since the 1980s, has seen 3,000 people die and 30,000 people infected.
This is a day of shame for the British state. Today's report shows a decades-long moral failure at the heart of our national life. From the National Health Service to the Civil Service, to ministers in successive governments, at every level, the people and institutions in which we place our trust failed in the most harrowing and devastating way. They failed the victims and their families, and they failed this country.
Well, the infected blood inquiry, which was announced by Theresa May back in 2017 and began in 2018, handed down its final report yesterday, offering a damning indictment on decades of mismanagement.
And today, the government is set to outline a compensation package to victims, with reports of £10 billion being earmarked.
Well, joining us now is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Good morning, Olivia. We expect to hear more details about how exactly this £10 billion will be apportioned, but there are also serious questions now about what justice will look like, whether or not we could see corporate manslaughter charges being brought, or indeed people being stripped of their peerages.
Well, absolutely, Isabel. The two things that we'll be finding out more about today is A, that compensation package. We're expecting it to be £10 billion, but we don't have details on how it's going to be portioned out to victims and their families. Obviously, this dates back into the 1980s, over 4 decades, so there's a huge ripple effect on the number of people affected by this scandal. And then, of course, there's the question of who will be punished for this? Who will be punished for this litany of failures on the part of successive governments? In the report, individual ministers are singled out. Ken Clarke, who was the Conservative Health Minister, is said that he had serious failings, and there are calls now for him to be stripped of his knighthood. Tony Blair, too, is singled out in the report. He said that he didn't think an investigation would be worthwhile, although he did sympathise, of course, with the victims of the scandal. Then there's talk about corporate manslaughter charges that could be levelled against whole departments of the civil service and parts of the National Health Service. The problem, of course, with this is it is very, very difficult to work out who originally exactly was responsible. We know who was responsible for the cover-ups, and I'm sure we'll find out more in the coming days and weeks about specific ministers over the course of so many governments who should have done more to make sure that this horrific scandal was redressed. But in terms of who made the mistake at the beginning, it's really, really hard to know. And that's going to be something which ministers will be looking into over the next few weeks.
OK. Olivia Utley there for us in Westminster. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, the Shadow Minister without portfolio, Nick Thomas-Symonds, is joining us down the line. Good morning to you. Good to see you. I want to start by talking about this infected blood report that we received yesterday. Widespread condemnation of both the state and, indeed, failings within the National Health Service. Apologies from your leader, Sir Keir Starmer. Tony Blair, your former leader, also being singled out in that report for a number of failings. I just want to hear from you, really, where we go now and what justice looks like from your perspective, and what you think we need to see done besides the compensation, which I know you have said you fully support.
Yes, so firstly, it's very good to join you this morning. Yesterday was a grave and profound moment for our country. Decades have passed with this quite awful scandal and victims not receiving justice, and the way they've had to fight for justice. Whilst I pay great tribute to them, the reality is they shouldn't have had to fight for justice in the way that they have. Now, in terms of where we go after yesterday, Sir Brian Langstaff made clear that whilst an apology, a meaningful apology, is really important, and that's what both the Prime Minister and Keir Starmer gave yesterday, we do now need action. Firstly, the compensation scheme, which I would expect the Cabinet Office Minister to announce today, and we'll get cross-party support from us to get that money out of the door as soon as possible to victims who need it, both the infected people and indeed the people who've been affected. You've then got a wider question of individuals of both political parties over many decades, politicians who are now going to have to answer questions about their own role. And then it is also, though, in my view, about looking at what Sir Brian Langstaff called institutional defensiveness. The fact that it isn't just this awful scandal, we've got the Hillsborough scandal as well, we've got the Windrush scandal, we've got the Post Office Horizon scandal, and how it is that there are people who are protecting their own reputations, protecting the reputation of institutions above the public interest. He talked about a cultural change. There's not a single policy lever to pull to make that possible. That's going to require leadership, and that's what we have to dedicate ourselves to do, not just now, but in the months and years ahead.
But how do you plan to change that? How do you plan to restore public trust in the British state? Sir Brian Langstaff, who you just alluded to there, the report author, he suggests that there should be a so-called duty of candour demanded in law for civil servants, yes, that there's a legal obligation to speak up rather than a cultural expectation to shut up. Should whistleblowing be mandatory?
Yeah, I do support the introduction of a duty of candour. It's something that we've already been arguing for in the context of Hillsborough, and I do think that duty of candour is very, very important and crucial in terms of the duty on public servants to tell the truth. And there are other practical measures that Sir Brian Langstaff has put forward, like, for example, in the National Health Service, when serious issues of concern are raised, that those issues are then made known to the most senior people, whether it is in that particular NHS trust or indeed other parts of the National Health Service. There's also some very strong recommendations about mandatory training for clinicians, given what happened with these infected blood products without proper consent by patients being given. So there are some very practical and important things, and indeed legal changes we can make. But all of that also has to contribute to an overall change in culture, to a change in mindset, and that is something that's going to require political leadership as well.
I'd like to get your view, if I can, on the move being made yesterday by the Chief Prosecutor for the International Criminal Court, filing applications for the arrest warrants of Hamas leaders and also Benjamin Netanyahu and his senior colleagues. The British government has said that this action is unhelpful and makes us a step further from any sort of meaningful pause in fighting or getting hostages out or humanitarian aid in. What is Labour's position in all of this, and do you think the absolute backing from President Biden of Israel potentially could undermine the International Criminal Court?
Well, look, we do believe in the International Criminal Court and its independence, and what's happened here is that the prosecutor to the ICC has indicated that he would like to seek these warrants. Now, that is an independent decision for the prosecutor. That will now go to a panel of judges, and whether those warrants are granted is a matter for them. If you respect the independence of the ICC, which we do, then that is the process that should now take place. But at the same time, we still have a situation where we have the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we have hostages that need to be released, that have been captured since that heinous attack by Hamas on the 7th of October. So at the same time, we have to continue to keep up the diplomatic pressure, making clear to the Israeli government that a full-scale attack on Rafah would be unacceptable. We will continue to push the government to release their legal advice around arms exports, but we must also continue to make that case for humanitarian aid as well, and that's what we will continue to do.
Well, here to talk to us this morning about Labour's plan for next generation of new towns. I think we can all agree that we've got a housing crisis in this country, but that plan is already being criticised. Tory chairman Richard Holden, speaking today, has said that Labour completely failed to enact this new policy last time around, didn't even build one new town. The Labour Party had the lowest level of house building since the 1920s. And now we have the issue of NIMBYism in this country. How are you going to tackle the NIMBYs and succeed this time around if you get the chance?
Well, Richard Holden's party has been in power for 14 years, and we find ourselves today with this acute housing shortage, people unable to get the roof over their heads that they need. New towns was an idea of the immediate post-war Labour government. I think it's an idea that has found its time again, and that is because Labour is saying we want to build 1.5 million homes over the course of the next Parliament. Yes, that will require changes to the planning system to ensure that can happen, but it also means to get to that number that local building is not going to be enough. We are going to have to look at the idea of new towns, these huge, larger projects. And what Angela Rayner will be setting out in a speech today is how we won't only be looking to build the homes we need, but we want to build communities with the infrastructure support that they need as well. And I look forward to hearing more from Angela Rayner about that in her speech later today.
I wish she would come on and talk to us. I can't think why she is avoiding us. But Nick Thomas-Symonds, you're a good sport. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Britain's Newsroom is coming up at 9:30 this morning, and Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner are here to tell us all about it. Morning, you two.
Good morning. That man, Nick, was at Andrew Pearce's book launch yesterday evening, wasn't he? I saw him only a few hours ago. I think we're both sober by now. Anything this morning?
I made a joke. I said, barring a political miracle, Nick Thomas-Symonds will be a Labour cabinet minister after the next general election. I said, but being a good Roman Catholic boy, I'm praying for a miracle. Got a good laugh. Got a good laugh. Certainly did.
Right, we're going to be reflecting on the infected blood inquiry again this morning. A little bit talking to a few people. Do they feel like they've got justice now?
Was going to talk to the Haemophiliac Society, which said before Ken Clarke got his peerage, he was health minister during a very crucial time, 1983, when he said there's no link between AIDS, HIV and blood. What? So the Haemophiliac Society said back in 2020, this man should not get his peerage. Let's wait and see what happens with the effective blood inquiry. There's now a clamour for Clarke to be stripped of his peerage.
Lots of ministers have been unfavourably, exposed in this inquiry, but actually his behaviour, he hasn't covered himself in glory in all of this, and that's been very difficult, I think, in kind of really making the suffering worse for the family.
His response in the public inquiry was appalling. He was rude, truculent. Why are you asking me all these questions? Because it's a public inquiry. And Ken Clarke is a lawyer too, and he's always had this sort of avuncular, friendly. Ken Clarke likes a pint, likes a cigar. He was appalling in that public inquiry, and there is this clamour. So we'll be having a debate about whether he should lose his peerage.
We've got an exclusive interview with the Prime Minister, Catherine Forster, in Vienna, which I think is being done as we speak. So that is going to be hot off the press this morning.
And he's very chuffed because the Austrian government, he's out there against the Austrian government, are saying they back the Rwanda plan. They may not be Rwanda they agree with, but they think the idea of processing illegal migrant claims offshore is a good idea.
It's public endorsement, isn't it?
It is.
Which is what he's out there for.
It is, exactly. Yeah. And I'm a fan of the plan. Brev's not a great fan of the plan, but I think it's the only thing we've got.
I just
got to work.
And come on, you've got to tell us about Finding Margaret and the book launch. She was giving speeches last night. Was it quite a glittering event? It
was quite a glittering event. Well, Joan Collins made a very witty speech, actually, at my expense, it has to be said, but she was very jolly. I made a speech too, and my big sister was there, and I was very proud to have her there, because she only found out a few months ago that I'd tracked down my birth mother.
Really?
I hadn't told her. There were a lot of people, a lot of politicians there. David Davis was there. Who else was there? Beverly Turner was there with her young man.
Who else was there? Well, your usual sort of... You were there with your young man as well.
This gets better and better.
Our young men had a little nice little chat together, didn't they? That was nice.
Beverly's young man is younger than my young man.
Don't be jealous.
But no, it was a really lovely evening, actually. And for someone who's worked in the media for such a long time, you are incredibly well-liked.
Which is odd.
Which I find quite odd.
I know. And we were in the Carlton Club, which is, of course, the home of the Tory party establishment, so it was great fun to take the mick out of people like Kevin Maguire, who, I've sparred with for 30 years. And I made the point, it was his first time in the Carlton Club and it'll be his last.
It was a room full of your genuine... your friends, I think, it's fair to say. People that you've known for many, many years, which is not always the case when you're at showbiz dudes.
And I think the extracts that I've read, anyway, of your book shows that these friendships, these sort of political and journalist and MP friends, you've kept close for years.
So Amanda Patel obviously was there because she was the one who knocked on my birth mother's door and said, "Cooey, guess who? Jane Moore, who found her, Carol Malone." Carol Malone, of course, went to the wrong club. She went to the Garrick Club and caused a scene when they said there's no Andrew Pearce book launch here.
And Steve Barclay was there.
Cabinet Minister.
Chat with him.
Nice guy.
Very attractive, isn't he?
Oh!
He's very charismatic.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Wow.
We had a few ministers there, which is always nice, and a few people from the Labour side too.
Well, I look forward to receiving my signed copy,
the treasurer of the Liberal
Andrew.
Democrats was there, and I gave her £1 for the Liberal Democrat election fighting fund.
I had
Probably
to
the
buy
biggest
my
donation.
own. I bought my own book last night.
I too.
I gave my 20 quid to Andrew Pearce.
Is that how much it costs?
Yeah, 20 quid.
I'm being told we have to move on. I'd love to talk all day about your party.
Thank you,
I did get an invite, I'd just like to add.
And was mine in the post, Andrew?
Yes, darling. I thought you would be there.
I like this morning, by the way.
We're having a lovely time.
We're having a great time.
Dazzling duo.
Oh, bless your heart.
Thank you.
Bless your heart.
We'll see you at 9:30.
Looking forward to it.
programme. Good to see you both.
Right, just time to tell you about our latest cash giveaway. £20,000. That's the biggest amount that we've given away yet, and you can spend it however you like.
But you've got to be in it to win it. Here's how.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a wine, what is it? I never won a penny in my life. I don't know what to say. Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Now, do stay with us. Still to come, Angela Levin is here to talk all about Royal Chelsea Show and the King and Queen.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Between 1955 and 1989, an average of 55 nuclear tests were conducted across the globe each year. More than 30,000 young British and Commonwealth servicemen served at British test locations in Australia and the Pacific Ocean. But in the years since, those who were involved say they've been ignored and lied to about their exposure to radiation. For decades, Lab Rats International has represented the millions across the world exposed to fallout from the testing programmes and the families who still suffer today from illness and deformities. Last year, the government unveiled the Nuclear Test Medal, recognising the military, civilian and overseas staff and personnel who participated in Britain's nuclear testing programme in the 1950s. But for Lab Rats founder Alan Owen, whose own father was a nuclear test veteran, the work is only just beginning. In September, they launched a legal challenge to the Ministry of Defence to provide the test veterans full medical records, which they say they've been denied access to.
We sit in this bubble as the nuclear test veteran community, fighting against the establishment. And they will say, you know, ministers will go in Parliament and say, all you've got to do is apply for your medical records and they'll give them to you. You know, it just doesn't happen. It's not a reality. They're not there to as easy, as accessible as just applying. They will fight you all the way. They will delay it.
In response, a government spokesperson said, "We are grateful to all service personnel who participated in the British nuclear testing programme, which is why we have formally recognised them with an official medal. Nuclear test veterans who believe they have suffered ill health due to service have the existing and long-standing right to apply for no-fault compensation under the War Pensions Scheme." The fight for these veterans and their families lives on because thousands who came before never got the recognition and justice for their service.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to breakfast. Now, royal fans were delighted to see the King and Queen at the Chelsea Flower Show yesterday, with King Charles even being called the King of Compost, and the Queen was the Queen of the Bees.
Well, one woman with all the details is royal biographer Angela Levin, and Queen Bee herself. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lovely to see the King looking so well.
They love going to garden centres, and they do a lot during the year. Yeah, I do. Yeah. But they love it. Camilla doesn't interfere with his garden in Highgrove. He has the most amazing garden with all different sort of things, lots of poppies everywhere, or actually things done in a special colour of his late mother. Oh. And it's just the most beautiful garden. And Camilla does hers in her own house down the road. And I think it's really nice, but they really do love it. They do go there, and I think King Charles was particularly keen that he could manage that. And although there was a lot of people, it was still fresh air and fine. What we don't know if they're going to go to is the wedding of the year.
Wedding of the year.
Society wedding of the year. Because there was, when his daughter, this is Hugh Grosvenor, right? It's a family is the Van Coutsems, and with the first wedding of their daughter in 2004, they wouldn't let Camilla sit next to Charles because she wasn't married to him, and the Queen and the King were coming, and then Duke of Edinburgh was coming. And they said that she had to come differently. She had to sit behind. William told his father, "You have to sit behind me, and you can't come out in the same car," and all that sort of stuff. And they were very upset about it, so they didn't go, and they didn't speak to the family for many years. And it was a shame because King Charles had known Hugh since they were at Cambridge, so it was very sad. Now, I hope they will go. It's not absolutely sure. Who isn't going to go is Harry, because he says he doesn't want to make a fuss there and disturb everybody, but I don't think he's had an invitation.
Really?
But, yes.
Because he is Archie's godfather, isn't he?
He's Archie's godfather.
So that's a surprise.
And he is also Prince George's godfather. So the children were very close, and when Diana died, they helped them and went out with them, and they were very kind to them. But they realised it would be very awkward for the royals to have him here, either for their own reasons or Harry has said they don't want to come, but I think it's the former.
Prince William is rumoured to be an usher. We look forward to seeing the society wedding. Angela, we have to say goodbye. Very brief today. Thanks for your time, and goodbye from Ellie and me. It's been lovely having your company.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There's a chance of some heavy, persistent rain, particularly across eastern parts tomorrow, but through today, we're talking about showers. We've already seen some showers developing, especially across parts of England, but these are going to become more widespread, more frequent, and pretty heavy as we go through the day. There's also the risk of some thunder, especially across parts of Northern Ireland and southwest England. Elsewhere, there will be quite a few showers around, also some bright or sunny spells. And in any sunshine, it should feel relatively warm, with temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens, possibly just about getting into the low 20s Celsius. More showers to come as we head towards this evening, and they are going to be pretty heavy for some of us, even across parts of Scotland, though they won't be especially frequent here. We could see some downpours. A decent amount of bright or sunny spells around, though towards eastern parts, holding on to a bit more cloud here. Plenty of showers, though, across parts of Northern Ireland. Likely to see some disruption, especially on the roads. Could be a bit of surface water flooding. Also plenty of showers across many parts of England and Wales, and here they could be heavy, possibly even thundery too, so do take care, especially if you're heading on the roads. As we go through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, we are going to see more showery rain developing, and there's the potential for some more persistent rain to kick in across eastern parts as we go towards dawn on Wednesday as well. Quite a bit of cloud for many of us, so temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, but there could be some murkiness for some of us, some mist, some fog patches, a bit of low cloud in some spots. Tomorrow, the big talking point will be the heavy persistent rain. A bit of uncertainty as to how far west this is going to spread, but it is across eastern areas that it's most likely to be pretty wet here. Some heavy persistent rain. Meanwhile, further west, it's looking slightly drier, but some showery outbreaks, some bright or sunny spells though, and temperatures looking similar to today. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Should there be criminal prosecutions after the conclusion to the blood scandal yesterday?
Yes, and what about Ken Clarke, who was Health Minister? Should he be sacked? And Rishi Sunak we're getting an exclusive interview with him. He's in Austria, and the Austrian government is backing the Rwanda-style migration plan.
And Angela Rayner's plan for new towns. Will they be in your backyard? What's that going to look like?
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Ayrshire, the A76 is